to a special Lego Town event that's not open to...
Guidelines nung binabasa ko. Let's say, for example, private vehicle, allow
like what?
dalawang pasahero per row.
They are locked in a back.
Talking about maybe just the possibilities of...
Whoa! Hey, cat.
I try to get
Oh my God!
I'm gonna move. I'm gonna move you.
That's assault.
The possibility. Whoa! Hey, cat.
To bring their friend to lay before Jesus and finding the people around too many for them to get near to Jesus, finding the people around too many for them to get near to Jesus.
The bosses of ITV are coming in. What would you like me to? Kids do it, YouTube Kids do it, and the BBC are also now embracing this. Why, and I apologise for my cat's tail, why are you not doing this by default? Rocco, could you tell them?
90% of CITV
we tolerate this. If in every key position of the state, the representative of the ancient communist secret services.
At the airport here in Grand Rapids and also at Battle Creek, 1700s at Kalamazoo. Rain's pretty much over. Storm Track Live still showing just a few sprinkles of rain off of the slow-moving system. Comes right across the state of Michigan, and that system could bring us about an inch of rain through the mid part of the week, tapering off here late in the day on Thursday. And Thursday could be a pretty windy day, and Thursday also the coolest day that we will see.
Town hall meeting, Niels Usakvos, the mayor of Riga, Latvia, was upstaged by his very thirsty cat Dumka.
How much money the West Island SPCA says they need to stay open. How much money the West Island SPCA says they need to... Oh, bless you.
I definitely believe cats improve our lives. And what would you... That's definitely not the case with my cats.
I guess you're right. What other benefits?
Sometimes they can get in the way of it when you're trying to work, which can be a little annoying.
To Sid's hygienic webinar from that, and I think it's because there's loyalty and trust. It's not just a cold call.
That are contacting me is really good. For the recordings, and we're starting to interact by email now, so it's really good.
That was a really good one. Thanks. We might use that, Kirsten, except we could literally look straight up your cat's bum.
And also, uh-oh, the cat is taking off. Also, we've got, we'll be talking about the cat. Anyway, stay with us. We'll be back in a moment. Okay, stand.
Alerji kimse var mı? Neyse.
But at this fashion show in Turkey, it was a cat that ruled the catwalk, doing its grooming on stage instead of models had to step around it. As it playfully swiped at, the cat stayed 7 or 8 minutes, a longer turn on the catwalk than any of the actual models said to have entered the show tent from a nearby garden. Strutting as if to the beat of the music.
Sunday, partly sunny with some sprinkles possible late.
56. Hey, look at that. My cat Charlie just showed up on the table.
Being used or manipulated during the Russian investigation concerns. And so
Yargının işi de kolaylaşacak başlıkları var. Dilerseniz verelim ekrana kediyi. Şu anda çıktı gördüğünüz gibi. Sevmek lazım. Aynı zamanda da kapılarla ilgili onlar da şu anda kış mevsiminde DRT'ye sığındılar. Bu kedimiz de buradan artık hani almak durumdayız programdan.
La brisa continúa en estos momentos del noroeste entre 7 y 12 millas por hora. En general debe continuar así en las próximas horas horario de la madrugada. Temperaturas actuales en 63 Homestead, 62 Hialeah, 60.
The cat was too adorable and funny. Lyra, charmed by the insistent little photobomber, ended up naming the cat Frajola Delegato and taking him home with him. Lyra then found a forever home for the lovable stray in the home of his aunt, Josenide Guedes Lyra. Lyra reported on Facebook very often. We love happy endings. Please share this story with your family and friends.
In die Nacht hinein beruhigen. Dann legt sich ein Hochdruckgebiet über uns drüber und das ermöglicht dann klare Nächte und vor allem sehr tiefe Temperaturen heute Nacht. Und unsere Studiokatze ist auch gerade unerlaubterweise hier drin im Moment. Aber ich behalte sie jetzt einfach.
Very appropriate fashion later today. I'm Nicole DiDonato, live in East Town. And those details coming up.
Hello, how are we doing? Good evening, folks. How are we all this lovely Thursday evening? Hope we're all well. Bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to put my phone on charge. Professional. Alright folks, work from home is the name of the game today. That's the subject, that's the topic. I dive into who's doing it, who likes it, what does the future hold. Pandemic's been raging for a year and 4 months, a year and 5. From the very first day, millions have worked from home who had no experience of doing so previously. That is a colossal systemic change. That means millions of more people having less contact with people on a day-to-day basis, having certainly less physical interaction with anybody face-to-face on a day-to-day basis. Hopefully it's not physical because they're in a workplace. And that's got all kinds of spin-up effects as well. The businesses around offices in the city, the property prices around offices in the city. I suppose I've been triggered this morning reading the news that the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, has come out in full force, and this isn't the first time he's done this. He's got priors, but he's came out once again, I suppose, arguing against working from home. So let's take a look at this story first, and then we can dive into the detail. Straight in today, folks. No messing around. What's lighting doing? Looking a little gaunt. Oh. Apologies, folks. It will all be okay. Ooh. How's that? Brown-skinned man. Camera denies it. Constantly. Whitewashes me. Better. Right. Rishi Sunak warns young home working. Sorry. That's completely the wrong pronunciation of that. Rishi Sunak warns young home working may hurt their career. Not a great headline, though. I'm just going to put that out there. Young people will see their careers benefit by working in the office, the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, has said. He told LinkedIn News he doubted he would have done as well if he had started working life virtually. His working life virtually. Mr. Sunak worked in finance, including at banking giant Goldman Sachs. He said he still talked to his early mentors, saying, "I doubt I would have had those strong relationships if I was doing my summer internship or my first bit of my career over Teams and Zoom." That's why I think for young people in particular, being able to physically be in an office is valuable, he added. The government has recommended a gradual return to work in England since restrictions were lifted on 19th July. However, the Scottish Government wants people to keep working at home until at least 9th of August, where possible. Many firms and industry groups have said they will take a cautious approach to bringing staff back into the workplaces. Business group Deloitte has been increasing the number of staff allowed to work in its office, 30% pre-19th July to 50%, and will keep to that until September. NatWest said that it would bring back a small number of priority workers, while insurer Aviva said it expected to see more people returning, but that employers were expected to work in a hybrid fashion. Accountancy firm KPMG has allowed people to work from its offices if they made a request to their manager. Mr. Sunak said, "I've spoken previously about young people in particular benefiting from being in offices. It was really beneficial to me when I was starting out in my career. The mentors that I found when I first started my job, I still talk to, and they've been helpful to me all through my career, even after we've gone in different ways." Just remember that sentence, folks. The mentors that I found when I first started my job, still talk to, and they've been helpful to me all through my career, even after we've gone in different ways. Bear that in mind, folks. Blended approach. Another former Goldman Sachs banker, Xavier Rowlett, who's been in the news this week for telling the younger generation of bankers to stop complaining about long working hours, said technology now had a bigger role to play in working relationships than pre-pandemic. "We're never going to go back to exactly the way we were before," Mr. Rowlett, who ran the London Stock Exchange for 8 years, told the BBC. But the Chancellor also has a point, which is that human interaction, besides the new technological tools, is also important. I think we're going to end up with a blended approach. Yes, by any means, get back into the office, but do not underestimate the power of technology. So there you have it. The word from the Chancellor of the Exchequer: get back to work, or your career will suffer. Now, remember that line about the mentor? Bear this in mind, folks. Just take a look at Rishi Sunak's career path and ask yourself whether or not you will let this man influence your opinion when it comes to deciding whether or not to work from home. Sunak worked as an analyst for investment-backed Goldman Sachs between 2001 and 2004. He then worked for hedge fund management firm, the Children's Investment Fund Management, TCI, becoming a partner in September 2006. He left in November 2009 to join former colleagues at new hedge fund firm, Thelem Partners, which launched in October 2010 with an estimated $700 million. This Thelem Partners is also the Thelem Partners that may or may not be benefiting from its production of the Moderna COVID vaccine. The Chancellor Rishi Sunak has refused to disclose whether he will profit from a surge in the share price of the COVID-19 vaccine manufacturer Moderna, one of the biggest investments held by the hedge fund he co-founded before entering Parliament. That's what you call a business interest, I think. So, which launched in October 2010 with an initial $700 million. A lot of money. I wonder where that came from. Sunak was also a director of investment firm Catamaran Ventures, owned by his father-in-law, Indian businessman N.R. Narayana Murthy. Who, you might ask? Nagavara Ramaro Narayana Murthy is an Indian billionaire businessman, founder of Infosys, and has been the chairman, chief executive officer, president and chief mentor of the company before retiring and taking the title Chairman Emeritus. Chief mentor. Remember I said watch out for that sentence? So, let's read that line again. The mentors that I found when I first started my job, I still talk to, and they've been helpful to me all through my career, even after we've gone in separate ways, in different ways. That mentor there, billionaire Narayana Murthy. So that's our starting point, folks. And that's our topic for the day. Working from home. You do it? You like it? Do you love it? Do you fucking hate it? You want to keep doing it? And what I'd quite like to get to is what's right. What's the right way forward? 2 years' time, say, assuming that things go back to quote-unquote normal. Where are we with this? How does life look, and how should it look? In about half an hour's time, I'm going to be opening up the phone line, as it were, in the Discord. There's a channel in the Discord called Phone in Queue. Feel free to drop a little message in there. And before long, you can be chatting to me on this very stream. We can have a lovely conversation. All joking aside, I would love to talk to somebody that's had experience of this or just has an opinion of it, to be honest. Working from home, why do you do it? Do you like it? What's next for you? So, until then, let's watch a couple of videos about this subject, right? Now, there's a few different takes on this. The thing to bear in mind is that business interests have already got involved. like anything else to do with how things work in the office, ways of working, how do people work best. You're going to see companies that are entering into the fray with their own surveys that are serving their interest best. All that aside, we have to rely on the fact that this data is objective. Now, it requires a degree of trust, but hopefully it's not misplaced. So let's take a look here. Thank you for joining, folks.
Personal belief is that this is a sea change. There is no going back to status quo. If one company tries, they're going to be met with 10 others that have maintained the experiment. So I think we've turned a corner.
When I fled the office in March 2020, I left a half-empty coffee cup on my desk like a slob, and I left my gym bag under my chair. I remember thinking, who knows what's next, but I'll come back for that later. Turns out I would have to buy new running shoes. This past year flipped all of our lives upside down, and now that vaccinations are proving to be incredibly effective, they're flipping upside down once more. These days, I know how to quarantine, how to wear a mask, how to socially distance, and how to work from home during a global pandemic. But experts say that we've failed to face the pandemic head-on and will now need to live with the coronavirus being eternally endemic, which means that with many companies, mine included, bringing workers back to the office this fall, I now need to learn how to work from the office during a global pandemic. In April 2020, 70% of Americans were working remotely, according to Gallup. Today, that share is closer to 56%, even though 61% say they'd prefer to be working from home. And now workers are quitting their jobs at the highest rates in 20 years. In fact, it's the highest rate ever reported by the BLS. 4 million people quit their jobs in April 2021 alone. My name is Johnson Hess. You all can call me AJ.
Not fired from, quit.
CNBC Make It. And this is what's next.
Alright, I talked about the reliability of a source. To be fair, it's just your bog standard journalist, not a business interest, as far as we know. But you'll see some of the resources that I've pulled up are perhaps a bit sketchier, so bear with me.
If anyone can tell us about the future of work, it's Brian Well, Google's Vice President of People Analytics, and Amy Webb. Amy is the founder of the Future Today Institute. She's also a professor of strategic foresights at NYU Stern School of Business and a visiting fellow at Oxford University Said School of Business. She's a quantitative futurist, which means she uses data to build models to find emerging trends and then uses that info to find plausible outcomes. So I wanted to talk to get her take to see if the changes the pandemic made on work culture would actually stick.
Hey there.
How's it going?
It's going well. How are you doing?
I recently moved, but I'm currently thinking about whether or not I should unpack my formal wear for work. My boss is preparing me to come back to the office. I feel like I have to relearn how to do that all over again.
This has been on a lot of people's minds. What does...
Just so you know, folks, as well, so this was June 26th, 2021.
the future of the office look like?
Apologies, that's quite important for context, I suppose.
Where is it? What's the work from home configuration for teams? And how do we manage our re-entry into the world of the physical and the living? A lot of companies that are allowing hybrid work aren't allowing people to work from home Monday and Friday. So what does that tell us about the future of transit? It means Tuesday through Thursday is going to be hell for anybody who's trying to commute with a car. And what does that mean? Well, that's a signal for local cities, administrations who could right now be adjusting what those traffic patterns look like, but we know they're not doing that, right? So I think we're looking for there's going to be gridlock in ways that we just haven't seen before and haven't anticipated.
But the changes to the way we work are much deeper than how many days we go into the office or what rush hour looks like.
I do think one of the outcomes of COVID is a lot more people working in fractional roles. Sure. So this is somebody who might work for 4 companies or 5 companies, giving each one 10 hours a week.
And our work relationships will.
I mean, this is a trend that we've seen long before the pandemic. The turn towards independent consultants right? That's an economic trend that people have been observing for years. Some of the biggest companies in the world have made an entire fortune off that very thing. Look at people like McKinsey and Company, who essentially their job is to go in and decimate businesses and recommend that people are hired and fired very quickly. And perhaps in the pandemic it's been accelerated, and I suppose people working from home perhaps leads to more freelancing. Not sure. Anyway.
To relearn how to socialize and get along with one another, which unfortunately could lead to more conflicts in the office.
I'm not comfortable predicting what the future of work is totally going to look like. I am absolutely comfortable predicting the prevalence of more and more viruses in our lives, right? So what are we going to do? Keep having this debate and this discussion about vaccines? The answer is yes. And in this country, we're going to wind up with a bifurcation that cuts across weird socioeconomic, religious, educational spaces, but is very deeply rooted in misinformation.
And Webb says that the fraught political and cultural climate of the past year will not just disappear when we return to the office.
We are coming off of the killing of George Floyd. That hasn't been resolved. We have a lot of underlying tensions that had nothing to do with the pandemic that we're all going to have to contend with once we're back in each other's presence.
Webb says that the next 24 months will be a sort of disorienting phase, kind of puberty as we awkwardly try and return to the office, mask acne and all. So I spoke with
quite, you know, I'm a fan of stock footage, folks. And that clip is a beaut.
That the next 24 months will be a sort of disorienting phase.
So it's in slow-mo. That might be fun. I'm in slow-mo.
A kind of puberty as we awkwardly try and return to the
Moves the laptop away. Fantastic. You gotta love Bloomberg.
Office, mask acne and all. So I spoke with Brian Well. He's the vice president of people analytics at Google, and he's a data guy who constantly thinks about how
data guy
and what makes workers most productive. And if any company is on the bleeding edge of the future of work, it's Google. I wanted to know, if productivity didn't drop, why do we need to go back to the office at all?
We saw that productivity and performance did actually shift. As we were shifting into new ways of working, we very quickly geared up our survey infrastructure to reach out to our employees and ask them critical questions along the way. And one of them was a very simple question about productivity. I regularly reach high levels of productivity. And it's a question we had asked in the past in our surveys. And in the first couple of weeks of everyone shifting to working from home, the responses plummeted by 15 points or more.
But as Google continued to survey its employees, Brian saw an upward trajectory as his team acclimated to working from home. It didn't take long for productivity to reach pre-pandemic levels.
The first thing that we learned is that only talking about productivity really doesn't meet the employee where they're at. Productivity is important, but I will not say to my team, we were amazingly productive, how great it is that we can continue to be productive going forward, because even though that's true, the reaction is, yeah, but can we also talk about the toll it took on me? Can we talk about what I didn't get from my coworkers and from you when we were in this space of not connecting? Where we ended up as a company is offering as much flexibility as we could to enable Google employees.
That's it. And you've also got to think about the question, all right, here's your survey. Yeah. Are you productive today? Yes or no? Why are you asking me this? Just trying to figure out how well it's going working from home, what we're going to do in the future. There's always, and I suppose this maybe is a survey symptom, but how reliable is an answer when the result of that answer is going to be whether or not you get to work from home? I love working from home. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm really productive. Thanks. Hate it. No, I'm doing shit. Productivity's going through the floor. Anyway, not doubt the data too hard at this point. Occupuk, how you doing? Good to see you. You can't do all kinds of jobs in home, do you? No, that's a very good point. not all jobs can be done from home, especially not public sector people-facing jobs. Some jobs there's absolutely no way around it. And that's another thing to consider, I suppose, folks. Fairness, right, and equality. If you can't, under any circumstances, work from home, is it fair to grant this freedom to millions across the country? Is that the right way of looking at it?
To optimize for themselves while also giving teams what they needed. A default option that we think most employees are going to take advantage of, which is coming into the office 3 days a week and working from another location 2 days a week. It lets you do all the things we came to love about working from home, while also getting a moment of connection and the ability to do innovative work in person in the office.
What Google's thinking is the way that's going to make the most people happy is giving them more control, right? Is saying, here's the general framework, but after this crazy year where you felt like you've had control of nothing, we're going to let you control where you work Mondays and Fridays or whatever day. So not to get too, philosophical, but what do you think that control does for, workers who might be struggling after this past year?
For many employees, there was this sort of anxiety about what comes next. So all of the tough decisions that you made to get through the last year, if you feel as though Google can unravel all of that by requiring you to come into the office 5 days a week, that's a source of anxiety. Control, I think, is actually a sense of relief. When it came to work productivity, where can I do my best thinking? Where can I do my best coding? Where can I be do my best work? You've got some people who say from home, some people who say from the office, and almost an equal percentage of them who said it doesn't matter. So wouldn't it be easy if it were nice and simple you could categorize people into one or the other, and it's not that way.
Is there a solution for those companies who can't kind of go to the end of the earth that it seems like Google's going to try and make as many people as happy as possible?
Yeah, this is one of those things that I don't think money is the biggest issue for many of them. So
it's very easy for Google to say that money's not the biggest issue, isn't it?
Acknowledge that many Google employees aren't going to get what they want either.
Sure.
Because they might be in a job that requires them to work in a particular location. We're hoping that most people can find what they're looking for, but there are actual role constraints and job constraints and business constraints that dictate a little bit. So it's not like we've created this environment where everybody just gets everything that they want. It's complicated.
Paint me a picture. What are going to be some of the big changes physically to Google's offices?
The reasons that people need to be in the office, like when you really get down into what kind of work are they doing, a lot of it is around collaboration, innovation, the social part of work. And so what Google is doing now is looking at our workspace and say, how can we optimize it for those kinds of activities?
Google's new configuration reads as if it were written in a science fiction novel. At Google's new campfire spaces, in-person attendees sit in a circle interspersed with impossible to ignore large vertical displays, so virtual participants are on the same footing as those physically present. Think Star Trek. Brian says we simply are not going back to what
Star Trek
before, in part because companies like Google still need to compete for talent. And after workers survived the past year, many put a premium on flexibility and control.
My personal belief is that this is a sea change. There is no going back to status quo. If one company tries, they're going to be met with 10 others that have maintained the experiment. So I think we've turned a corner, an exciting one.
All right, there you go, folks. Food for thought. All right, some more journalists' take on this matter.
COVID-19 is transforming people's relationship to work.
Hope we're all well, by the way, folks. Again, if you want to join in the discussion via phone in, you are welcome to join in the Discord. Jump in there. Head over to a channel called Phone In Q. Give me a shout, and I'll be sure to add you to the queue, and you can come and tell me about your experience from working from home.
With millions now out of a job. and many more getting used to working in a very different way. The proportion of Americans working from home full-time has gone from 1 in 50 to more than 1 in 3.
COVID has been a transformation, and that raises a whole bunch of questions. Do you need as much expensive office space? And do individual workers need to commute into the office every day?
The need for workers to gather together in offices has shaped almost every aspect of modern life. And the shift towards remote working could have far-reaching consequences. It could alter the shape and purpose of cities, affect gender equality, and even change how we think about time. The modern office emerged along with the Industrial Revolution, when people migrated to cities in search of work.
Factories required everybody to be together so they could take advantage of the powered machinery. That started to bring everybody into cities where they could work together and easily walk to the place where they were working. That in turn led to the growth of the offices to manage all those companies.
Early offices were organised into rows of desks for clerks, overseen by a central manager, mirroring the production line on the factory floor. And 200 years later, despite the rise of the internet, the basic function of the office persists.
We made the leap from seeing that people could communicate via electronic means, via email, via shared documents, without realising that didn't mean that everybody had to be in the same place.
You've got mail. You've got mail.
We've had 20 odd years.
I wish that was still a thing.
Office design is really only starting to reflect the real possibilities of that change.
The uncomfortable truth about offices is that they are expensive and inefficient. Companies spend, on average, $10,000 on office space per employee every year. The most expensive office real estate is in Hong Kong, where every square foot costs, on average, $265 per year. Beijing and London are the next most expensive locations. The need for social distancing in the wake of the pandemic could reduce the number of staff in London offices by 2/3, making the office look like an expensive artefact.
I've talked to...
Alright, that's a good place to cut in with something else then, folks. Bit of chopping and changing. You up for it? We're going to be alright? Hold on for the ride. The spectacular rise and fall of WeWork. Office rental company WeWork. Shared working space company WeWork.
I think when you cover IPOs and high-flying startups, you're used to seeing dramatic changes over short periods of time.
This idea that the office as we know it is changing
undergone. I think people felt like they blinked and...
seems like a relevant jump off.
They're running out of cash very
diversion. So this was November 2019.
The company could run out of cash by next month.
I was surprised at the vitriol and the speed with which investors apparently rejected what WeWork was trying to do.
From the first day that we started WeWork, it was about bringing people together. There's an energy that you feel. That energy is something that's hard to explain. It's something that either you feel it or you don't. We like to call it the we generation.
In less than 1 year, WeWork went from one of the most highly valued startups of all time to losing more than 3/4 of its value, ousting its rockstar CEO, and desperately needing a cash bailout from its biggest investor just to keep the lights on. In order to understand how we got here, we need to take a look into the mistakes made along the way.
The ambitious vision of WeWork is effectively dead, period.
This is a case study of when a company got too much money too fast with no effective oversight on how to spend it.
They are no longer the market leader. That company is going to get smaller, and it's never going to be 10 times bigger. I mean, the story's over.
As late as summer 2019, the co-working company WeWork was considered one of the most valuable startups with a $47 billion price tag, more than Airbnb, Stripe, and SpaceX. But in just a few months' time, that valuation has vanished, and the very future of the company is in doubt. To understand how this happened, it all starts...
Is this a fair diversion, folks?
...CEO and founder, Adam Neumann.
Is this relevant enough?
Adam Newman is the co-founder of WeWork and was its CEO for a long time. He came over to New York for college after being in the Israeli Navy and
Becoming doubtful.
including, my favorite example is a baby clothes line with knee pads.
I feel like I've taken us too far off the subjects, perhaps.
He came up with the idea of sort of sub.
Ella Marie, how you doing?
McKelvey, his
You alright?
who's a trained architect, sort of came up with the plans, and then boom, they were away. They started.
Look at those emotes.
Which they sold, and that was the first iteration of WeWork, which they started in 2010.
WeWork is a new environment for the workspace. So co-working.
New ones coming soon, folks.
There's a movement in changing the way people work.
2010 was a great time to be starting a co-working company in New York City. There were a bunch of landlords with empty office buildings, vacancies. WeWork actually presented a solution for them. The very first building down in Grand Street in downtown Manhattan was where WeWork launched its first co-working spot, and from there it was sort of boom. From 2010 to 2011, it doubled in size, and from then on, the growth was exponential.
Some of their original investors were people who were involved in commercial real estate. They got some early investment from a venture capital firm called Benchmark, and eventually sort of kept growing, kept taking on new leases, and started to grow the business starting in New York City.
Business grew.
Loving those emotes.
2015, the company already quadrupled its valuation to 10.
I'm going to take that background away.
23,000.
Make it a bit more slick, I think.
32 locations, renting.
Do a bit of designing with it. Play around with the design a bit.
WeWork's whole idea was, let's not just be a commercial office leasing company.
Need to decide what to do for that second emote slot.
The new world.
Very exciting.
How people work and make it better.
Community, being surrounded by a group of like-minded individuals, being part of something bigger than yourself, inspired.
I'm not sure. I'm doubting the relevancy of this now. I feel like I've taken us off track. But just to neatly sum up that WeWork part of the occasion of the equation, blah. This is where they are now. So July 2021. So flash forward 2 years. So that Newman, right? Where are we today? Bear with me. Oh, from the top, okay. Say WeWork, and one person comes to mind. Adam Newman, the lanky founder and former CEO with flowing black hair and rock star persona, who would carry on about the energy of the company's communal workspaces. He also embraced a party boy lifestyle, said Elliot Brown, whose new book with co-author Maureen Farrell, The Cult of WeWork and the Grey Start Delusion, was published on Tuesday. Well before noon, Newman was known to offer potential investors shots of tequila from a bottle he kept behind his desk. He had a cigar bar-type vent installed in his office to suck out the marijuana smoke, Brown said in an interview. What emerged out of the haze? A company that investors from Japanese juggernaut SoftBank to major US firms like Goldman Sachs said was worth $47 billion. There's that name again. Goldman Sachs, where Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, made his name, or propelling himself to success on the back of his billionaire father-in-law. He created the country's most valuable startup, but it was essentially just a mirage, Brown said, a mirage that eventually disintegrated. Now WeWork is in the midst of a second act. After ditching Newman, the company hired a seasoned real estate executive as CEO and scaled back operations, making a big bet on the rise of remote work and planning to go public this year after the first attempt in 2019 under Newman ended in a debacle. That's the debacle that we just saw. So they're doing okay. But it's an interesting company to factor into the equation when we consider this idea of offices and office space and what we know as the office completely changing. $47 billion. Yeah, that's right. Silly money, innit? Silly money. What a speculation. They didn't see the pandemic coming. I'll tell you that.
Companies that say they're thinking of maybe using 2 floors in a building instead of 4, or maybe using regional offices as small sub-offices so that not everybody has to commute into a big city.
The idea of workers clocking in and out at the same time every day also dates back to the Industrial Revolution. Before that, people were paid based on how much they made, rather than the amount of time they spent at work. And if the office ceases to be the centre of working life, the idea of working set hours, or the 9 to 5, will become less meaningful.
We may well work on a Sunday or a Saturday afternoon if that's more convenient for us. We're shifting back again to people being paid for their function,
So,
not for the time they take.
depending on how broad that summary is and how accurate it is, it may be that if that's to be believed, before the Industrial Revolution, workers were paid in terms of how much they produced and how much they worked, rather than the hours that they were sat at their desk. Almost a bit more of a kind of trustworthy, I suppose, way of working. I feel like trust is a key word with this. It must be a factor in deciding people having to sit at a desk all day, no matter how much work they do, and how they feel, and how much their output is. And I think that's something that's going to keep coming back. Sorry if off topic, but just wondering what you think about legalizing cannabis, please. All for it. Absolutely. Yeah. At this point, I can't see anything blocking the way, to be honest. It's great for you. And they can tax it. So what are they waiting for? Don't know. I think it's a culture thing, probably. Very recently, London Mayor London Mayor Sadiq Khan commissioned a kind of inquiry, investigation into how it would be legalised, whether it should be legalised, what the benefits are, etc. And Downing Street came out and officially said on the record that it was pointless. So that kind of tells you where this government stands when it comes to the legalisation of it, unfortunately. What about you, Ella? What's your take on it?
Turn up.
Tech companies are leading the charge towards remote working. Twitter has already said its staff need never come back to the office if they don't want to. And Facebook says half its staff could be working remotely in a decade. These types of high-skill, highly paid roles have a disproportionate impact on the economy. They are known as knowledge jobs, and where they are physically located is important, as they support entire ecosystems of other jobs around them.
For every knowledge job, there are 5 other jobs that are dependent on that job. Some of these are very highly skilled, like lawyers and doctors, but most of them are lower skilled jobs like
Everyone wants to be based next to Google.
other sort of urban services.
You're thinking about where to start your new office.
The majority of Americans are employed in a way that means that they're dependent on knowledge jobs.
Yeah.
Although it's impossible to know exactly how many other roles are supported by these so-called knowledge jobs, if they were to become remote positions, it would have a profound impact on the jobs they support in the wider economy. But this isn't a one-way street. Knowledge jobs are such powerful...
Anecdotally, we know from the language that the government uses that it seems to be incredibly important, right? All politicians boast of companies that have settled in the country. Opposition parties criticise the government for companies that have left the country. We know it's important, but I think, like that report says, it's all a bit in the air. I really don't know. I know a lot of people find it really helpful with their mental health and physical pain and stuff, but the thought of legalising a drug is just scary. I definitely see the scary side of it. I've had a conversation on stream about my kind of view on it, and I got turned around actually, because I suppose I remain quite worried about the prospect of legalizing, say, harder drugs, because we still have a society that leads people to seek out medicinal ways out of their anxiety, depression, and legal highs that we have, like alcohol, caffeine. We are reliant on them in a way that's basically completely unrecognized on a day-to-day basis. Cities, in particular. But after talking with everybody, this idea of the benefits that are so huge, I think probably outweigh that cost. Talking about things like removing the criminal element of it by legalizing it, and then making sure that people get access to clean drugs, quality drugs. But yeah, I suppose it still concerns me, because I think you must have a lot of infrastructure in place to protect against all of these mitigating factors when you bring in legal drugs. And I suppose I don't trust the government to do that, even if they were to turn around and say, you know what, the report's not useless into legalizing weed. Let's do it. There's no way that I want this happening under a Johnson government that will simply introduce it with no safeguards in place, no kind of societal measures, no support groups, no further education on drugs in schools. So I think you need both. It's a tricky one. It's a question for the ages, I tell you.
The economy, because they are usually based in cities.
It's a good question.
Jobs tend to be located in cities is because they depend very heavily on these agglomeration effects. So when you put lots of people very closely together, they become much, much more productive. So Americans living in agglomerations with more than 1 million people are more than 50% more productive than ones living in metros with smaller populations. The question for knowledge workers is whether you can replicate those productivity.
I wonder what that productivity metric is exactly. That'd be quite interesting to know. So she's saying they're more productive when they're around more people in more populous places of the world. What's the productivity metric? I take that with a pinch of salt.
A relationship to a city or sort of no relationship to a city.
Those able to work from home are a privileged minority.
Where's the happiness metric,
In general, the higher a country's GDP per head, the more people are able to work remotely.
So what's this? Percentage of teleworkable jobs. Jobs that you can do remotely, presumably. So you see quite a low percentage of teleworkable jobs. Well, mostly in South. A very high percentage. Places like North America, Europe.
In Cambodia, just 11% of jobs can be done from home, compared with 45% in Switzerland or 37% in America.
Things like internet access, high-speed internet access are going to be fucking crucial when we talk about this.
But the work from home revolution is having a particularly pronounced effect on some groups within the workforce. Women are more likely to work in face-to-face roles, and so they have been disproportionately affected by the recession caused by COVID-19. In previous recessions, men have generally been more likely to be laid off, as they are overrepresented in manufacturing and construction. This time around, more women in America have lost their jobs. And those who've kept their jobs have extra challenges. Mothers are now interrupted over 50% more often than fathers. But the normalisation of home working during the pandemic could also have long-term benefits for some female workers.
If remote work becomes this way of working that has no stigma attached to it, then I think that requirement that you drop everything and be in the office all the time for these sort of very high-powered careers will sort of slacken slightly. I think that it might be a good thing for women to sort of help them break through.
Although offices are sitting empty, corporate leases can run for as long as a decade, and there has not yet been a rush to sell office real estate. So the office, in some form, looks set to survive the pandemic.
I'm skeptical when people say, oh, well, we've sort of proved that we can do it from anywhere. I'm like, well, you just try and do it for a year, and we'll see whether you're as productive as you were.
The global experiment in remote working has shown there are some things that are hard to foster online, like corporate culture and creativity.
It's quite interesting because this is quite a new idea to me, that people are getting used to it quickly and then becoming less productive the more that they work from home. Because I would always have assumed that you either get it right at first or you don't. And then over time you get better at it. And subsequently you get more comfortable with it. But then, of course, that's my perspective. And then I have to remember that, no, of course, people get sick of it. Right? You get sick of something. Oh, I used to do that so well when I was back in the office. And that kind of just grows over time.
Of the post-pandemic office.
Well, that's about all I've got to say. And a darn good job of saying it, too.
For younger workers, they make friends and connections and a network where they can get on in life later on. It's very hard to build a kind of esprit de corps in a company for people who haven't met. Offices will be less of a prison cell and more of a collaborative area, more of a games room, where you go in to try and shoot the breeze with your colleagues and come up with something different.
It may feel like the pandemic has revolutionized.
I mean, that's a whole lot of speculation right there. So what has he said? He said, we take it bit by bit. It's very, very difficult to create connection remotely, essentially, he said. Well, first of all, I massively disagree with that. I think this fucking thriving platform of Twitch is one of the best examples of why you need not meet somebody face to face in order to have a connection with them. He then went on to say that offices are going to become less like a prison cell and more like a games room environment. I feel like is a weird take on it. Incredible amount of speculation. But do you know what? Speculation is kind of what I'm here for on this topic. So I'll stop complaining because I want to speculate about how the future's going to look with this. But yeah, I'll shut up.
Working life, but in some ways, it has simply come full circle. Before the Industrial Revolution, there was no working week, no 9 to 5, or fixed workplace for many people. And thanks to COVID-19, this may be closer to the way things will look when the world emerges from lockdown.
I'm Philip Coggan. I'm the Bartleby columnist at The Economist,
There you go.
Management and Work. If you like.
There you have it. So, a lot of speculation there. I don't know how much salt anybody is taking with that. I'm taking a lot of salt with it, considering really for an economist or The Economist feature, there wasn't a shitload of data. Particularly towards the end, you're talking about, offices will look like this. This idea that there'll be a kind of games room and less like a prison cell is interesting to me, because It's what companies have been trying to do for years, particularly in the city. Anybody that's applied for a job in London or Manchester, there's every single company that puts out an ad is talking about office culture, games on a Friday, drinks on a Friday afternoon, you know, social activities every week, blah blah blah, what have you. This isn't anything new, so I don't know why it would happen now. An office like a games room sounds rather fun. It does. Fucking does. Google has a lot of them. But really, surely the only motivation now that wasn't there before to make your office like a games room would be just to mitigate people wanting to stay at home, right? I want to stay at home, I don't want to come into the office anymore and commute. Oh yeah, but have you seen we've got this, we've got a PS5 in there now. I'll get my coat. It's a bit of like a weird... Here we go. Google Zurich. Look at that. What they got? Foosball, air hockey, table tennis. Pretty standard games room shit. Sure, I've seen better ones than that. There's Manhattan. Table tennis table and a basketball hoop. That looks like it's years ago. That's like an early-ish Google logo. When was that taken? Wonder. 2006? Fucking hell. Google were having all that shit in 2006. So, there you go. Nothing new. Anglishane, how you doing? Google Dublin probably has a pub. Yeah. Right. I'm gonna put in Google Dublin Recreation. Folks, by the way, go and follow my good friend Anglishane, fellow British streamer. You will have a very, very good time over there. I've been lurking for a while. I appreciate it, mate. I do. Glad you're good. Enjoyed your stream earlier. It's like a, is that a Millennium Falcon? No, it's not. It's a Death Star, isn't it? I don't know if it's the camera angle or what, but this dude is fucking long. Holy shit. Oh, of course I've got a pull. Didn't really need to full screen that. You've all seen a swimming pool before, I think. Right. As a reminder, folks, I'd quite like to have a natter with somebody about working from home. If you like, jump in the Discord, got the link here. There's a channel called Phone in Queue. Drop me a shout in there, and we can get a little phone in going. If you work from home, do you like it? You fucking hate it? How should the world change, depending on either of those answers? Should you have the right to work from home? Should you absolutely not be able to work from home in the future? How's this going to affect cities? How's it going to affect the average worker? I'd love to work from home doing IT or something. Perfect example of a job that should be able to be done from home, surely. It would get boring. Do you thrive off the buzz, being around other people in the office? A lot of talk of the buzz. Unvaccinated subhuman. Your passport, if you will, into the Discord chat will be telling me, and all the lovely folks here, that you know that the vaccine protects you against COVID. The farting man. How are you doing? I do work a job, unfortunately. I would love to be a full-time streamer. And I hope that one day, with the support of these lovely folks here, and all of the other folks that come through and enjoy my content, I will one day be able to. I am social welfare. Interesting. It's alright, unvaccinated subhuman. I got that feeling. You have a good night. Appreciate your candour. I am social welfare. I am social welfare. I am social welfare. I am. Sorry. Where I got carried away from that, folks. Yeah, as I was saying, I want positive takes and I want negative takes. So here's a positive take, right? Bear in mind with this, folks, that this is something that is relatively new in terms of the way the media is treating it. So despite the fact that we've worked from home for fucking years in many parts of the world, it's not a new thing at all. But for the purposes of this conversation, we have to treat it as new, because what's happened is that, I said millions, let's put that down a bit to hundreds of thousands of people, right, are realising whether or not they can work from home. People are making decisions. Companies are having to face harsh realities. The first harsh reality being, oh shit, nobody can use our office. We're going to have to find out a way for them to work from home. The second harsh reality now is, oh shit, loads of people that we've told to work from home love working from home and they don't want to come back into the office. Maybe we should get a games room in to tempt them back in. So this is the newness of it. And because of that, it's quite hard to get information about this that isn't partly opinion based. Maybe in a couple of years' time, or in fact certainly in a couple of years' time, the things that we read about this are more likely to be more data based. So bear that in mind. But hey ho, millions are more productive while working from home, study finds. Employers have also prioritised learning new skills during lockdown. This is The Independent. More than half of workers, 58%, have reported that they have been more productive while working from home, according to a new survey. The study from internet provider TalkTalk. Now bear in mind, As the farting man said earlier, I do have a job. I work in marketing. So I know for a fact that there's two strong incentives for a company like TalkTalk to produce this kind of survey. One, the press. Published on The Independent, talked about on Twitch, right? And then two, they're in the business of people working from home. It would be a lovely byproduct of this survey if people were to read this and decide, oh shit, I'm going to work home forever. And I'm going to do it via internet provided by TalkTalk. So bear that in mind. The study from internet provider TalkTalk has also found that bosses agree that working remotely has had a positive impact on the working day and on their employees. When employees, directors, senior executives or business owners were asked what unexpected benefits have been provided from working from home, 30% reported that their teams have been more productive, while 35% said they had been more collaborative. While the issue of whether workers should return to the office is hotly debated due to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, this was in September 2020, research suggests that businesses can be successfully run from the comfort of employers and employees' home. So with that September date in mind, I suppose it brings us back to that point where perhaps by this point people weren't getting pissed off yet at work. Maybe people were still comfortable working from home, but who's to say that 2 or 3 months after this article, people didn't think, actually, I'm not that great at it. Bear it in mind. Tristia Harrison, chief executive at TalkTalk, has even suggested that our productivity levels are so high that we can achieve a week's worth of work in 4 days. With flexible working, we're becoming so much more productive. It seems that Britain is now getting 5 days work done in 4, which is encouraging as Britain builds back from the crisis, she said. There's been a 4-day week study very recently. God, that was all the wrong words. 4-day week, an overwhelming success in Iceland. So this was the 6th of July. Trials of a 4-day week in Iceland were an overwhelming success and led to many workers moving to shorter hours, researchers have said. The trials in which workers were paid the same amount for shorter hours took place between 2015 and 2019. Productivity remained the same or improved in the majority of workplaces, researchers said. A number of other trials are now being run across the world, including in Spain and by Unilever in New Zealand. The trials run by Reykjavik City Council. 2,500 workers, 1% of Iceland's working population. On top of getting their work done during a global health emergency, almost a quarter of workers reported that they had started to learn a language over lockdown, while more than a fifth worked on their cooking, 15% brushed up on their baking, and 13% to gardening. That's given me less faith in the story. I'll tell you why. We can talk about productivity and we can talk about happiness levels, mental health, all of that kind of thing. I feel like it's a red herring when we talk about the hobbies that people picked up during lockdown, because that's the novelty aspect of it, isn't it? That's the, oh, I suppose while I'm working from home for the next few months, I may as well take up insert hobby here. Anyway, I'll stop interrupting this article. Let's get through this. However, concerns have been raised that young people need face-to-face office time in order to progress. Training, development and welfare have been cited as elements of employees' working lives, particularly those who have just joined the workforce, that are better nurtured. Oh, the Independent does love a typo. Better nurtured better in an office environment. Learning face-to-face in the workplace is an unbeatable way to build skills and confidence. We must not deprive the next generation of this opportunity, argues Carolyn Fairbairn, Director General of the Confederation of British Industry. So Carolyn Fairbairn clearly agrees with Rishi Sunak, the words of who we read earlier, who was saying that young people risk their future by not working in an office, despite the fact Rishi Sunak has no idea about what does not work in an office, considering that he, I'll say this again, propelled himself to success on the back of his father-in-law's billionaire fortune. I know a couple of young people. Jordan, how are you doing? Good to see you. I know a couple of people who benefit from flexi time as a bonus of being civil servants. They start and finish an hour early, and later Monday, Thursday to gain 8 hours, allowing them to take off a Friday. I did that exact same thing not 3 years ago. I work for myself now, but the very last office I worked in, that was the setup. And I did it probably half the time, I think. Boy, did it take its toll. For me, it was too much. I think because when you add it up across the week, say on the Monday, that's 10 hours in the office, 1 hour getting to the office, 1 hour getting back from the office. So that's 12 hours out of your day. And I know that it all adds up, but for me it was... I couldn't hack it. That's really interesting though, Jordan. I hope you're well, by the way. Good to see you. Right, we've got the positive perspective on it. Alright, this is from Forbes. This is largely opinion, right? So let me show you who this is by. I haven't read this yet. It's not what I wanted to do, I just wanted to pull up a profile. So Tracy Brown, she's a PhD sociologist and the author of The Secrets to Happiness at Work. What an uninventive title. And the author of Bring Work to Life by Bringing Life to Work. So do remember that she seems to be thoroughly invested in the notion of people being able to get to an office. Thinking productivity with work from home is improving. Think productivity with work from home is improving. Think again. Here's what you must know. Thanks, good to hear. Good to be here. Still grinding through some uni work, which I deferred due to mental health issues early in the year. But enjoying tuning in when I can. Oh, I'm glad you're here. I'm sorry to hear that you've been struggling. Fucking more power to you for grinding through it. Uni work is fucking tough when you're not feeling great. That is a bot if I ever saw it. Look at that. What was it? Joe Biden sussy balls 30. You ain't a bot. Oh, my apologies. Thank you for the follow. You've got a bot-like username, so I think you'll not judge me too harshly. When I've seen the likes of Biden engineered the vaccine 1, 2, 3. But I'm glad you're not a bot, and I thank you again for the follow. How you doing? Forgive me. You alright? You've probably seen the press and the hype about working from home, and the amazing productivity that is accompanying these new work circumstances. But is it real? In a couple of words, probably not. While there may be elements that seem valid, there are other pieces that are suspect. Productivity is important to organisations, of course. It's productivity that we keep talking about. I do want somebody to give me a bit more of a specific metric. If it's productivity, like I said earlier, that is gained, if that's data that's gained by asking people, you know, that little sketch that I did earlier, which was ridiculous, of can you answer this survey saying if you feel positive about working from home and if you're more productive? Right, I love working from home, so yeah, I'm more productive. I know I hate working from home, so no, I'm not that productive actually. Can I get back to the office, please? I feel like there needs to be something a bit more specific if we're going to rest on this in the future. But hey ho, here we go. Productivity is important to organisations, of course, but it's also important to individuals. When people are efficient, they have a greater claim to recognition, rewards and career growth, at least if their company doles out these goodies equitably. It's also worth mentioning that productivity isn't the only evidence of success, or even the most important. Performance is probably the better, bigger concept, based partially on productivity, but also including engagement, commitment, learning, growth, innovation, and contributions to community as a whole. Productivity is part of a broader whole of overall performance. But productivity still counts as a metric that matters. With all that's been written about productivity, what counts most in the midst of a pandemic? And if the claims of enormous productivity improvements aren't real, what is? And how can you create the conditions for productivity? Here are some important considerations. Panic productivity and the wall. Many of the reports of increased productivity were early in the pandemic. Some have dubbed this, so this was published, sorry folks for context, this was published on January the 17th, 2021. Some have dubbed this the panic productivity, attributing the early perception of increased productivity to the adrenaline boost people got from the sudden shifts in the nature and location of their work. So this is the same kind of thing that you see when you start a new job. Maybe you think, oh, I've got to show up, everything's changed, this is a now or never moment for me. Would you say it would increase productivity if workers gained the power of choosing their work hours? I think there's a lot to consider, and I think productivity doesn't always equal quality. And that is something, of course, an employer would be cautious of. You mentioned you'd benefited from flexi time earlier, so you'd have first-hand experience on that. Yeah, so I work for myself entirely. I'm completely self-employed. So my hours are completely at my choosing. You know, get the work done, do it when I like, do it at 2 a.m, do it first thing in the morning. And that's been great for me. I think the quality of the work, it's difficult to say, right? Because I think I put a lot of quality into my work because it's just me. It's all on me. If I do shit work, there's nobody else. I don't have a team. I don't have managers. I don't have somebody to blame, right? Like you do in an office environment. So that, I think, forces me to work better. But that's obviously nothing to do with choosing my own hours. I don't know if that part of it necessarily impacts the work itself. But it's definitely better for my mental health to be able to choose my own hours, because I can do the things that matter to me more easily. You know, I can spend more time with my girlfriend. I can spend more time in the housework. I can spend more time, and this is crucial, talking to you lovely folks. So that for me is why I think, and I haven't really said it on the stream yet, but this is why I think everybody should be afforded the opportunity to work from home if they can. Jamie, how you doing? You love your swimming, yeah? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that it didn't go that well. You'll get better at it. It sounds like you just need to get back into the swim of it. Did I say the swim of it? Fucking hell, I didn't mean to do that awful pun. Jesus. Somebody clip that. A lot of sole proprietors mention choosing their own hours as the main benefit of being their own boss. If employees could do the same whilst working for someone, would that take away from sole proprietors? Would it take away from them? I get you. I don't think it would take away from them necessarily. I'm trying to weigh that up in my head. I suppose you get into the question of what you have then, I suppose, is people who are employed full time, and by that naturally have a lot more benefits. Like potentially it could go as far as an employee having private healthcare and choosing their own hours versus a contractor who doesn't have any private healthcare and chooses their own hours, and it's that's uneven, I suppose. I'm glad you like that, Panella. That was completely accidental, into the swim of it. Twitch just sent me a notification saying lower sub prices for those in the UK. My Irish Republican heart. Well, it is good to see you, Owen. Yes, folks, localized pricing is coming to Twitch. So, depending on where you are in the world, your subscription is likely to be a fair bit lower. If you want to support this channel, hit that subscribe button. If you've got Amazon Prime, link up your Twitch channel. You can subscribe for nothing at all. Always appreciate the support, folks. So if I use Russian VPN, I can get dirt cheap subs. Don't think that's how it works. Maybe. I'd imagine they've put something in place to stop that. Right, so panic productivity and the wall. It's the wall. This is very dramatic. Right, so she's arguing that at first everything's exciting when you work from home, so you do better. But where'd you go from there? Job loss was rife. It's true. And people may have been working like crazy in the hopes of staying visible, relevant, and ensuring their boss thought that they were still adding value, even from home. But we're hearing a lot of people now hitting the wall. They're tired, fed up, and burned out. Their productivity was high at first, it has declined as the pandemic has worn on, and as the stresses around them have mounted. Facilitating learning for children at home, caring for loved ones, and navigating all the norms for work are pressure points which have built over time and are unlikely to let up anytime soon. I am looking for data here, and I'm not seeing any referenced. Right, so the solution. Okay, so she's posing problems and solutions. The solution to that: true and lasting productivity requires balance. Hard work and dedication, I'll never like that phrase, should be interspersed with time off to refresh and rejuvenate. That's basically what we've got now, isn't it? It's not really changing, not really a revolutionary idea, that. The time equation. Right? Productivity is a measure of how much people get done in a period of time. The problem with some of the new work from home productivity reports is they're not accounting for the increasing hours people are working. Employees may report they're more productive, but we also know they're working more hours. And there's no data here. This is something that I have seen referenced in data elsewhere, but it's not referenced here. So it's not that they're actually packing more work into the same envelope. Who says envelope? Can we get a show of hands for envelope and envelope? Chuds are now cheaper in the UK. That's a Freudian slip, wasn't it? Subs are now cheaper, folks. There you go, $3.99. No, can't pay $3.99 for a chud now. No. The reason I asked is that because I am sure people would consider starting their own business rather than joining one based on choosing their own hours, etc. If you had that ability in a contracted job within a company, you have added benefits like, say, job security, healthcare, greater assistance and mentorship, assistance in gaining qualifications, etc. Yeah. I would agree. I think that's what I said earlier as well. I hope I did. I think that's the crucial point, is that you are inevitably going to have to face this question of equality. And that concerns me. Keeping equality between the self-employed and the employed. And also the inability for people working in certain sectors to work from home. Nurses never going to be able to work from home. So, is that discriminatory then? If we bring in all of these fast-reaching laws, especially while nurses are still paid shit. Right. 1 for on envelope. 2 for envelope. So I'm the only envelope twat at the moment, yeah? Alright. Fair enough. I'll keep counting. Honestly, after the pandemic, I support workers choosing if they remain at home or move back into the office if possible. We've still got tasty beats going, folks. Yeah, we do. If the government invests in rural broadband and establishing digital hubs, it'd be fantastic for rural regeneration and connecting rural communities to the national economy. As well as that, people don't have to give all their income to rent in cities just for work, if they can choose to work from home in the suburbs or rural areas. I've heard this term rent burdened recently. I don't know if it's in the UK, because it was an American that introduced me to it. This idea that if you spend over half of your income on rent, then you are rent burdened. And that's definitely a massive factor in this. The rent. That's the key question there, I think, is if the government invests in rural broadband and establishing digital hubs. Karl Marx would say that one of the key aspects of the revolution of the proletariat is the idea that power moves out from the cities into the suburbs. Exactly like that. Spending power as well. Not that he was concerned with the money aspect of it. But of course it requires governments facilitating that in rural areas. Offices, property around offices, this is still the power structure that we're dealing with now. You're only supposed to spend 30% of your income on housing. I wonder how many people fall out of that. Is that the measurement of affordable housing? What's the government's measure of affordable housing? Which I know has changed over time. Percentage of income? To jump on what Owen said, I think there would be greater financial circulation in local economies. Shopping local has been a big thing in Northern Ireland over the past year or so. Working at home would naturally suggest utilising the businesses closer to home too. Common sense, isn't it? From an economic standpoint. If all things are equal, I suppose. Of course I'm talking about this because it's not separate from politics at all. even though at first glance it may seem so. It's no separate from politics than, say, healthcare. Because in the end, somebody is making a decision as to what will happen with this. And with these points in mind, I think what we're already seeing is that the government is protecting the business interests when it comes to this. The city, as it were, is full of expensive properties, businesses that rely on people being in the office to purchase from them. And government ministers have deep connections with those property magnates. Maggots. What's going on? I think that's crucial as to whether or not we see that change happening. Even though I think it's absolutely the way that we should go. Equality of opportunity for people to work from home. Provide more spending power to the rural areas of the country. In the Czech Republic, if more than 30% of your income goes towards rent, the amount above 30% is paid by the government. Fuck, that's interesting. I didn't know that at all. Holy shit. Although would that also come under the lower cost of living in the Czech Republic along with lower tax rates? I'm going to read this response. The pandemic has been a blessing in a way for small local businesses. Many now set up click and collect services, online shops, and more people in the local area going to local shops. Not going to lie, community wealth building is just amazing. Thankfully, the community minister seems to be pushing for it currently. That's interesting. Hope you don't mean me reading out that reply. Oh, what's this percentage? Affordable rent product, which misleadingly defines affordable housing as 80% of market rents, regardless of a household's income. Defining and measuring affordable housing. Measures of affordability, 15. No, that's not what I wanted. Oh. This is the UK study. The proportion of incomes. The rent to income measure compares housing costs to incomes and thus seeks to overcome the shortcomings of the prices to earnings ratio. This method has the advantage of inherently capturing expenditure on housing that would be included by looking only at house prices, which ignores the impact of interest rates. It also enables us to measure the number of households paying above a set proportion of their income on housing costs. The traditional ratio used is that households should not pay more than 30% or a third of household income on housing costs. So there you go, it's exactly what you said. This gives a more tailored indication of affordability to individual circumstances and gives some indication of distributional issues, i.e., how it is affecting different groups in different locations, which will be masked in an aggregate average earnings or incomes to prices ratio. The measure is not without its critics. It has been argued, for example, that this measure can suffer from hiding under consumption of housing. This could take the form of households living in substandard housing, which, although it consumes under a third of the household budget, would not be widely described as fit for habitation. Alternatively, for those seeking to buy or who cannot afford to rent, it could result in them staying in their parents' home for longer periods. In this sense, it could mask affordability issues facing various types of housing. The last criticism may be useful in trying to capture the total number of people who might be facing affordability issues, so as not to miss particular household groups. However, it may be less relevant when considering what interventions could help bring down housing costs below a certain level. And indeed, analysis of the data for this paper shows that not being able to afford an additional bedroom to adequately house a child is actually associated with high rent to income ratios. An additional criticism of the 30% rule, or third rule, is that it takes little account of the level of income. If someone with a take-home pay of 10 grand a month decides to spend 4 grand on housing costs, then all being equal, you would see their housing as unaffordable. Whereas lower would be much lower. Yeah. Very heavy there, folks. But it backs up what we're talking about very well. Yeah, I'd agree, many smaller local businesses have benefited during the pandemic. Some have closed while some have thrived. I don't think it would be fair to suggest that the pandemic affected this. Reason being, businesses fail and succeed naturally. Outside the pandemic, this was always the case. Of course, it was easy for the bigger companies to survive. That being said, I think the biggest influence the pandemic has had on business is consumer spending habits and attitudes. These habits and attitudes being what we've mentioned, shopping locally within the local community. I think it's taken what differences that there are between businesses and accelerated them. That's my take on a lot of things with this pandemic, is that the businesses that were struggling were perhaps, you could argue, always going to struggle in some way. But whatever weaknesses there were have been accelerated by the pandemic. That said, that doesn't account for things like businesses not being able to accept customers. That would be a purely pandemic-driven factor. And then it comes down to money in the bank, really, doesn't it? How long can you afford to stay shut? All, government support considered. Some people, that doesn't touch the sides. Just gonna get a glass of water, folks. I'm getting a bit coarse. Bear with me. Hello, folks. Oh. How are we doing? Right, so let's quickly get through the rest of this here now. Productivity is a measure of how... Blah, 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 blah. We've read that. So in reality, they're producing results during times when they may have been commuting before. Or they're finishing deliverables at a time when they may have been off in the past. Proximity of work contributes to this dynamic. When there is a physical separation between the office and home, it's easier to turn off and set a healthy boundary. But when work is at the kitchen table or the home office next to the living room, it can be tougher to turn off, and therefore, employees are working more hours and producing more, but also making a greater investment of time. Still no data here. Very aware that there's still no resources to back up what's being said. But she's provided a solution, so we'll stick with it. Okay, there's a link coming up to some data, so that's good. That gives me more reassurance. Cultivate a healthy boundary between work and non-work activities. All work all the time can dull the senses, sap motivation and lead to burnout. People will have better overall performance when they are able to invest time in both work and personal pursuits. Again, not a fucking revolutionary take on things. We know that. That's what we have now. Alright, the complexity of work. So we've got some data finally. Another myth of productivity is related to the type of work people are doing. One recent study, thank you, showed people could be more productive on rote, routine or repetitive work, but less so on work that was complex, urgent or required problem solving. Let's take a look at that. Alright, so cognitive performance in the home office, what professional chess can tell us. That's interesting. It's very interesting actually. I mean, I won't speak too soon, but I don't think that message is meant for me. Feel free to tell me otherwise. During the COVID-19 crisis, millions of workers around the world have had to switch to working from home to comply with social distancing policies. Arguably, this development reinforced a broader trend towards more flexible working arrangements. It is likely to continue after the current pandemic. A crucial question for companies is how workers' productivity changes in the home office compared to the regular office. The answer to this important question depends on the specific job of an employee. For instance, previous research on call center employees has found that productivity might increase in the home office. This could stem from lower noise levels and fewer interruptions by co-workers in an open plan office. But highly skilled workers also as productive at home in tasks that require a high degree of concentration and that are conducted under a high degree of time pressure. Such tasks might include working close to an important deadline or setting up a detailed contract. All that tough work, setting up a detailed contract. Alright. So here we go, it's perhaps potentially the interesting point. To provide insights into this question, we consider professional chess tournaments. Chess offers a unique setting for studying performance in cognitive tasks, which is important in many modern professional, managerial, technical and creative occupations. During the pandemic, most in-person chess tournaments have been cancelled and replaced by online tournaments. For the first time, significant prize money and comparable rules in terms of time allowed to consider moves, as with in-person tournaments were used. Are elite chess players in these online tournaments able to perform at the same level as in traditional face-to-face tournaments? Okay. Alright, so chess players on average performed worse when playing online. Among the 7 players who competed in both in-person and online tournaments, larger errors were made when playing in the online event. Combining the effects across players and accounting for other potential differences in the chess game, such as the amount of time, pressure and complexity of the chess positions, the average size of their errors was economically and statistically significantly higher in online tournaments. This effect might be explained by the less competitive atmosphere in online than in live tournaments, which typically consists of sitting in front of a real chessboard facing an opponent. Carrying this over into the work setting, the findings for chess imply that the very fact that, in the home office, workers might not experience the same pressure as in a real work environment, sitting together with co-workers or seeing clients face to face, can result in a drop in cognitive performance. Okay. I like that observation. I think this is for me, isn't it, this message, Jordan? I personally think that smaller businesses should have been supported more by the government. But the ultimate question is, how could they have been more supported? How could they have been supported more? The initial response would be finance. But where would that have come from, considering the furlough scheme and others? Excuse the poor punctuation and grammar, very late, very sleepy. It's, I think, an error that the government has made to pose cutting back financial support for for people during the pandemic as being a way of protecting the economy, right? Because in the short term, sure, get back to work, get that furlough support away, no more welfare for you, get back in the office. But long term, regardless of the economics of that, what is going to happen, in my opinion, is that you're going to see people who have been forced to go back to work unhappily, forced to go back to work, crucially, with long COVID. And remember that 3 million people currently are estimated to have had COVID symptoms for a year or longer. Many chats here and in real life, IRL, with people that are struggling to get up the stairs, struggling to go for their morning walk. I think that, to me, is a long-term economic effect that the government hasn't accounted for. In terms of where does the money come from? The usual place, right? The coffers. And you don't have to do it forever. But I think this was too early. I'm of the opinion that this needed to go on until everyone was fully vaccinated. And that's not much longer to keep prying from the purse. Did you get vaccinated? Yes, I had my second jab last Thursday. Sore arm, but no bother. Very happy to have it. Much earlier than I thought I would be able to have it. How about yourself? Alright. So the chess thing, fair enough. People may be able to finish aspects of their work more productively, perhaps more administrative responsibilities, but they can't be at their most productive doing work that requires greater sophistication. This is a very hard summary to take from that data, and I don't think that's well written at all. They can't be at their most productive doing work that requires greater sophistication. That data didn't back that claim up. And remember that that data was about chess players, right? It wasn't about workers. That would have been a really fascinating study if it had taken some really complex work versus some really simple work, but it wasn't even about work, so I think you've got to bear that in mind. Got mine a month ago. Good. I'm glad you're protected. Alright, so a solution to this is, remember that the past two solutions have basically been what we've already got. Encourage people to consider where they do their best work. Avoid assuming all work can be done most effectively, regardless of the location. Empower people to choose where they do their best work. Create places where people want to be. So that's a link there to why the office simply cannot go away, the compelling case for the workplace, which I imagine is more of the same. Create places where people want to be, so they are attracted to an office where they can complete more complex work or problem solving. So presumably, based on what's been said already here, that's going to be something like quieter spaces where you can concentrate, perhaps. Bottom line, educate people and empower them. Providing plenty of choice and control about where they do their best work, whether it is more complex or more routine. All of this so far is geared to working from home needs to end. How long does this article go on for? Not much longer. Skimming these last points here. So collaboration, So the solution for that is help people form strong bonds with teammates and encourage them to build relationships together. Ensure employees are working together on meaningful tasks. Very, very broad. These tactics will help them collaborate whether they are working virtually or in person. Okay, sure. As people get back to the office, create places where they can collaborate and work effectively with their colleagues. Much of a muchness, I'm going to say. Individual versus organisational productivity. Alright, there may be some work that benefits from people expending independent effort. Individual productivity is an important metric, but also consider organisational productivity. One of the fundamental reasons organisations exist is to add value for their customers, and this requires integrating work across individuals and teams. The value chain must be, a chain, connecting multiple tasks, responsibilities, projects and processes to deliver solutions and innovations to the marketplace. Ultimately, coming together helps ensure there is continuity and quality across a chain. Fucking hell. The solution here. Remind people of their contribution to the whole, the company's overall purpose and the customer. Oh, this is very, very corporate indeed. Reinforce the value of their work. Create opportunities for integration, cross-functional work. While a quick glance at a hyped-up headline may seem convincing, it is necessary to look beyond the top line. Realise productivity may actually be deteriorating, and know there is action you can take to shore up employees' effectiveness. In addition, consider quality of life. People may be able to struggle along getting their work done, but they are also losing something in the equation. As my friend Marla said, I don't want to shit on this journalism, but as my friend said, isn't the best way to go when you're talking about data. As my friend Marla said, an important reward she gets from her work, beyond her paycheck, is the relationship she enjoys with co-workers. That's a bit of a lukewarm take, isn't it? An important reward she gets from her work, beyond her paycheck, is in the relationships she enjoys with co-workers. Never heard that one before. Thanks, Marla. Am I being too harsh? I don't think so. I think this is a really base level take. Work is more than just cranking out the proverbial widget or the number of keystrokes delivered. People must get something back. And a large part of the return is in relationships, social capital and connections with colleagues. This may be the biggest reason productivity can't be at its best working from home. We need each other. Being together makes us better in terms of our work and also in terms of our humanity through our connections with others. Oof. I must apologise, folks, because that took an awfully philosophical turn towards the end. I think you can blend. Oh, sorry, no, correction. I know you can blend data and philosophy well to make great journalism. That was not a fucking example of that at all. My friend Martha values her relationships at work. Sold. Alright, no worries. You've sold me. That's all I needed to hear. Let's take the last minute of this here. Surfer girl, how you doing? You alright? If everything went well earlier. If you just joined, you've just caught the tail end of my rant against bad journalism. Hanging scheduled my surgery for next Friday. Nice. Why did I think it was today? Don't know. That's good. I'm glad it's getting done. Catch the last minute of this. Let's put a wrap on this particular take. Then we can find another video. Sorry, Owen. I think I'm not sure if it did. Got replies, but nothing else. Not sure why. That one I can see, although I don't think it's for me.
Of a prison cell and more of a
Oh no, we've seen this bit already, haven't we? Sorry. Offices will be less of a prison cell and more of a games room. Gosh. I don't know. Don't know about that. And that's all. You got it, Owen. Alright, cool. Have we had this one? I don't think we have. Looking for all of the angles on this, folks. Bloomberg quick take, yeah? Which isn't particularly quick, so we may skip through some of it. How working remotely will change more than just work.
Remember when Monday mornings were like this?
Yup. It's a bit dated now, of course, because we're getting back to it. This was December 17th, 2020. Does anybody say 2020? I don't think they do they? It's 2020, isn't it? 2020, 2021. 2020, yeah. Learning to speak stream. Oh, that's London Bridge. It's gotta be. Look at that. Utter fucking chaos. That's the rat race, isn't it?
They're a bit different now. While those of us lucky to be working are now doing so from a spare bedroom or a kitchen table, the coronavirus...
Very important factor, of course, that I've failed to mention and should. There's two groups that I'm not deliberately ignoring. It's just that they're not part of this topic. Who are the people that cannot work from home and the people that no longer have a job to go to for various reasons. Not that I'm excluding them from this deliberately. It's just that we are talking about working from home. I do accept that we do have to consider if you can't work from home, should you get anything? All of these people get all of these new, say in this ideal future, it'd be an ideal future in mine certainly, when workers get to have the right to choose where they work. If you have to work at work, do you get anything? Or are you just watching your mates get more rights while you're having to turn up to your job? I'd fluctuate between 2017 and 2017, for example. 2017. I think I said 2017. God, remembering what I used to say. Working from home did benefit my opportunities, in all honesty. It was a pain in some regards, though. I was able to join a few organisations and work on a lot of projects that I wouldn't have been able to work on due to living in a rural area. That sounds like it was a very positive experience. I wonder why it was a pain. Because maybe it's the kind of things you were talking about earlier, perhaps. Not having access to that kind of high-speed internet resources, things like that, maybe. You don't have to let me know, but stressful and wasn't able to switch off. Right, so that's that lack of disconnect between work life and home life, isn't it? And that's one that I've not been able to identify in my own work life, but I'm sure is a factor that's affecting me in some way that I'm probably not aware of. I think generally I'm quite good at leaving work at work, even though it's in the same place that my life is. So say tomorrow I'll get up and go to work. What time is it now? So I'm at work in just over 8 hours. And it'll be Friday night. Generally, what I tend to be able to do is leave it all in the laptop, send the last email, shut down, and leave it where it is for the weekend. Very privileged to be able to do it. But then I do suspect when I read things like that, when I read things like your experience there, that maybe it's affecting me more than I know. Just eating in the very same place that I work, for instance, regardless of whether or not I'm working or not. Maybe mentally it's not the best idea for me to always be in the space that I earn my cashola in. I don't know. I said cashola. If anyone wants to take it up with me, your prerogative. And the broadband was awful until the OpenReach. Right, yeah, that is what I thought. It's also pretty expensive working from home. I know many families that ran into Argos around when lockdown was announced and cleared out all the laptops, tablets. Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's another thing that isn't talked about enough, is bills. Pay your electric bills, you pay your telephone bills, you pay your internet bills. I don't think you do. And really, it's got to be considered. If you're not using your company's internet anymore, surely you're paying for the same amount. You're not using any less. You're paying you probably got a shitter deal than your office does. Almost certainly got a shitter deal than your office does, because they're paying for it for 20 odd people. They're getting a discount. You're just paying standard BT rates and using the same amount of internet that you were at work. That's a really good point. You work from home most days these days? All days, yeah, all days. So I was fortunate enough that I've worked for myself for 3 years now. Or coming up to 3 years, I think. So kind of, well aware and adjusted to the benefits, I think. And I'm glad that, people have been able to do the same thing. I think it's one of the few positives to come out of the last year and a half, is that we've got a better sense of working from home and a better sense of awareness. This is going to sound so odd, but meetings were my escape, since they were the only form of structure in my day. I can understand that. There's this assumption that everyone can afford to work from home. It's so snobby. Paying for that laptop, paying for the Microsoft subscription, paying for the Wi-Fi bill, paying for the printing, paying for the electric, paying for mobile phone contracts, etc. Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And it's definitely one that it certainly hasn't been mentioned in anything that we've watched. And I certainly forget it myself often, despite the fact that I'm obviously paying for it. It's not a hidden cost. At all. So I can't really tell you how I've left it out of the equation. It definitely needs to be part of the conversation. Digital Tories. There's no magic money, internet. What? You know what I mean? You know the joke that I'm badly trying to make. Reminds me, of course, in the last Labour manifesto, one of the proposals was free internet for all. Nightbot, thank you very much for reminding me. Subscriptions and bits do help me eventually get to the point where I won't be waking up in 8 hours time and doing a job that I'm not a fan of. I gotta be honest with you. I love doing this. This is my thing. I'd go as far as to say. If you've got Amazon Prime, folks, link up that Twitch channel. You can subscribe for not a fucking cent. Reminds me, Ireland had a great general election. Sorry, I don't know why I read great general election. Ireland had a general election on the 8th of February 2020. Sinn Féin proposed digital rural hubs and allowing workers to choose to work from home. I never realised how prophetic and foreshadowing it was. I didn't care about that proposal, didn't even notice it until I went and read back the manifesto at the start of this year when I was bored. That's interesting. It's kind of, it does fall by the wayside, I think, the conversation about connectivity and that kind of thing. There was the data point earlier, I don't know if you were here for that, but saying that the data shows that people are far more productive in more populous areas. But a huge part of that is because they're going to be better connected in terms of this digital infrastructure. Like we learn about teleworking in school. I don't think we even touched on that in my school. Very foreshadowing. I think if we're gonna be able to get to this point, that's gonna be fucking key, isn't it? And that's a bit dangerous, because who's in charge of making that happen? The government. What does the government want? You to get back to the office as soon as possible. So that's not looking great as a prospect, unfortunately. Devolved administrations, if it's fair to call London that. But then they're not part of the conversation, are they? Just a reminder, folks, if anybody wants to jump on the phone, as it were, get in the Discord, join the little queue there, and we can have a chat. want to hear as many experiences as I can today. This subject that's close to me heart. Oh, that's why Labour needs to get their red arses into Downing Street and stand up for the workers. I couldn't agree more. Have a wee look at what our boyos are saying about working from home. Our boyos.
Has forced a sudden,
It's quite good, wasn't it?
successful pivot to
Oh, is that going to be loud enough for you folks?
working away from the office.
There you go, that's a bit better.
While the circumstances are unwelcome, there are some benefits to this style of working.
You have a more content workforce, a more motivated workforce, and also a more productive, efficient workforce as well.
So when the coronavirus is behind us, will our workday ever be the same again?
Oh, fucking hell, that beep. Could have done without that.
We spend a lot of our time travelling to work, and for most, the commute is getting longer all over the world. Globally, 2/5 of professionals consider the commute to be the worst part of their day.
Commuting has been found to be a major cause for stress that impacts on our physiological health and as well well-being. The total working day gets longer, you get less time at home, you do less exercises. When you have long commutes, you also cook less healthy food. I followed Swedish couples over a 10-year period, and we found that commuting long distances to work over 1 hour increases the risk of separation. Overall, we find that it's a 40% increase of risk of separating.
Before the pandemic, approximately 20...
I totally understand that stress. Got a couple. One of you gets to come home early. One of you has to stay 2 hours late. The next day it's the other way around. One of you has to stay 2 hours late. The other one gets to come home early. That makes complete sense. And that's something you kind of know if you've been in a relationship when you've been trying to organise date night or something like that. But it's nice to see it on paper. Oh wow, the Irish government launched a strategy and pushed legislation to make working from home a permanent option. They have a working home tax relief as well. This is news to me. Oh my god, this is news to me as well. Fucking hell. Fair play. Absolutely. So is that going to be the right to work from home, as it's often phrased?
5 million US workers spent more than 90 minutes getting to and from their jobs every day. In South Korea, 1 in 4 has a journey that...
I almost forgot. Folks, if you're looking for absolutely perfect blend of dolphins, surfing, musicals, and political chat, please go and follow the fantastic mod that we have in chat here, Surfer Girl. Workers will have a legal right to request remote working from their employers. Yeah, I think that is about right. Well, I've heard it put two ways. I've heard it put that way. You have the legal right to request that you work from home. And I've heard it put the other way, which is that employers must give employees the ability to work from home unless they can give a good reason. And what that would be, I don't know. So I've heard it put those two ways. I think that's the less powerful way, the right to request, because then obviously the employer has the right to say fuck off. I think it would be better if the employer had to give a good reason why they can't do it, which gives, I think, slightly more power to the worker.
Long. One of those people is Park Jong-han, a manager at a major telecoms company.
Basically, I throw away 3 hours of my daytime just to get to work and to come back home.
Since February, SK Telecom
Not unusual at all.
employees, including Yong Han, to work from home, or if suitable, to work from smaller local offices in the surrounding neighbourhoods of Seoul.
One of the mobile offices, if I walk, it takes about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I truly appreciate the time.
Yeah, it's not unusual at all. 15-minute walks to the train journey, 15-minute walk from the train to the office. You can easily amount an hour and a half.
And it actually comes back to motivation to work harder. It's not just time, it's a very quality time that I spend. Instead of, getting stuck in a bus, get stuck in a traffic somewhere, it cannot compare. The amount of time that I spent with my family really increased. During lunchtime, I can have lunchtime with my son.
Have you just shortened your hours and you're able to go and, like you said, exercise more, or do you find yourself working more as a result?
Because it's been too long, I totally forgot about it. But in the very beginning, when this program started, I was exhausted, actually, during the first few days, because there's no place for rest, right? Because I need to work anywhere, wherever I go. My mind was always on work. And when I talked to the teammates, they actually felt the same in the beginning. But after a few weeks, I think everyone found their own way to work. And now I know how to adjust, myself into, work mode versus, rest mode and so on.
Mask on, mask off. That was. What's the difference between those two pieces of footage?
Way to work. And now I know
Mask
how to
on.
adjust, myself into, work mode.
Mask off. I'm focusing on the wrong thing, as per usual, folks. An hour and a half a day. So, what's that? 3, 6, 7.5 hours a week. 7.5 hours less with his son every week. And you would appreciate it, wouldn't you? CBBC editing.
Rest mode and so on.
So, losing that journey into work could be good for us. But research claims our commute can also provide us with a means to separate our personal and professional lives.
Yeah.
And in a world
Here
of
it comes.
10-second bed-to-laptop commutes, that's a chance for some me time. But while journey times were already generally on the up, more of us were actually starting to commute less, thanks to a relatively new trend: flexible working.
Increasingly, we have seen people remote working from lots of different locations. There has been a reluctance to encourage flexible working, perhaps because managers see it as a loss of control. It can be quite difficult to manage people who you don't necessarily see on a day-to-day basis. There might be concerns around efficiency or productivity.
And is that a bit of a myth, or is any of that borne out in fact?
What we've found is that productivity can actually improve as a result of flexible working, and there isn't necessarily any impact upon the business if it's managed effectively. There's quite a lot of benefits. There is an opportunity for workers to have more autonomy over their scheduling.
Brilliant for the environment, of course.
Where they work. And when people have that degree of autonomy, it does lead to a workforce that is happier. You may have flexibility over the time.
Sensitive microphones.
Or the time that you can come home, so that you're able to avoid rush hour traffic. And if you're working from home.
Try looking back at some of my old street. They're probably too far back in the archives now. I imagine you would have picked up some breath noise on my old microphone before I got this bad boy.
A few days a week or completely at home, then obviously you can avoid the commuting altogether. And there's also benefits for employers.
A study by Harvard and New York University found that for those working from home, the workday is 48 minutes longer, probably replacing that time you spent commuting.
There's significant benefits for organizations that are able to manage these kind of processes effectively.
So what actions can organizations implement to harness the power of flexible working?
They need to have very clear processes and procedures around operating flexible work so that everybody has the same expectations. One department allows the majority of their employees to work flexibly, and another department, which is led by another line manager who has a different view, then you might find that flexible working isn't as supported as much. You need to treat people consistently and in a fair way, but you also need to recognize that there can be individual differences in how people adapt to flexible working. It will suit some people, but not others. So you do need to have a degree of flexibility yourself as a manager in how you manage teams and how you manage people.
And this flexibility can lead to productivity. A 2-year Stanford study of 1,000 employees at one company found that working from a home office resulted in a 13% increase in productivity, and 50% of them were less likely to quit.
There you go. So we've got another one. Productivity, and then add to that turnover. Two of the biggest factors in a business surviving in difficult times.
Half of them still wanted to go back to the office 9 months later, even though their average commute was 40 minutes.
I took 3 to 4 hour breaks as well. Went and got coffee, went on a walk, then walked the rest later on.
Productivity increased for some thanks to no commute and an ability to focus better.
If you get your work done,
also decreased for others due to a lack of work mindset.
Does it even matter?
And a dedicated workspace. So perhaps we'll start to see a more hybrid style become the norm, where for some days we work from home for specific solo tasks, and others we travel to the office to meet.
Has the audio dropped out of that? Look at that. The audio's dropped out of that.
Norm, where for some days, due to a lack of work mindset and a dedicated workspace. So perhaps we'll start to see a more hybrid style become the norm, where for some days we work from home for specific solo tasks.
They've left the fucking sound out of it, silly sausage.
And others we travel to the office to meet and collaborate with the team. The changing nature of our working lives has already led to many white-collar workers leaving the city and moving further out to find more space, some greenery,
one ear audio,
urban beeps and bustle. One person who misses
it's weird, isn't it?
Is Alice Shea, an urban planner and designer.
Very strange.
Just riding the subway. Riding the subway is one of those incredible experiences in New York City. It's got its highs and it's got its lows. But honestly, the subway system in New York City is one of the greatest levers for equity that we have. It is one price to get all the way across.
People say this all the fucking time,
or at least
in New York.
A couple of days of the week. Will where we live drastically change, do you think?
We're in a moment where commutes can be zero. So what does that mean for how we are distributed across our settlements and urban?
This kind of adoration for the underground is something that is not shared by Londoners the same way that it's done in New York. You will never hear a Londoner say that they love the experience of getting on the tube in the morning. The rush, the thrill, the buzz. It's not a thing. Never been to New York. I really look forward to getting that buzz. It sounds great. See BBC buy this channel. All these editing problems. Anyone I know from London says stay away from the tube. Exactly.
Agglomerations. I think it provides a lot of flexibility for certain workers. It's true. But there's other ties that keep people to place, right? It's not just about commute. So that's one factor amongst many. Access to services, access to family, access to the culture that keeps the city alive or your lifestyle interesting.
So the city as we know it isn't exactly going anywhere, but it might change in the way that we use it and the way it works.
Our street infrastructure and streetscapes can be reconfigured in a time of social distancing when we're understanding that private cars may not be as essential as we thought they were. We posited that if you took the streetscape in Manhattan, which is equivalent to 4 times the size of Central Park, reconfigured it in a way that actually looked at streetscapes as being about space for mobility and distribution at a bigger scale. So how do we actually decrease the number of private cars, and what are the opportunities that come with that? So increased space for pedestrians and walking, more effective distribution systems. Buses could run at least twice as fast, getting people around the city in an equitable way. The transformation of the way that we use our streetscapes could also enable better delivery of urban systems.
Is there an opportunity to build more equality in cities? You know, key workers, for instance, who aren't doing jobs on a laptop right now, they have to be in those areas, don't they?
Here we go. So we're finally on to this point. What about the people that can't work from home? We're not talking about them. That seems a bit unfair, no? I've never been on the tube, but trains are bad enough. Absolutely. My relative in London cycles most of the time. Cycling is the way forward. They're pedestrianising Oxford Circus, if anybody knows Oxford Circus. Very wild, commercial little bit of London. Always got taxis causing traffic jams going through it. Buses, trucks. Imagine living in New York, it'd become boring. Imagine New York being boring for you. You'd hate the whole world. If you can find it boring here, you can find it boring anywhere. It's up to you. Very late for that. Always needed pedestrians. Yeah, it's long overdue.
No matter what.
I mean, you bring up a great point. Service workers, essential workers, they are geographically bound. Mobile healthcare could be distributed more widely, more equitably, particularly if there's government and public drivers behind the way that that is distributed. We're also seeing massive changes in the way that retail is happening, right? Many shops are closed. When we have times when cities are more porous, when there's flux, when, real estate sector isn't so saturated, that porousness allows for an opportunity for micro entrepreneurship and also new innovations at a kind of small scale.
I didn't get a lot of meat out of that statement there about how you can give something to key workers. There's got to be something, right? The more I think about it, I'm like, I feel like I'd be pissed off. I had to work face to face with people. I had to go and see, I had to just watch all of my non-public sector friends getting their new right to work from home and tax breaks for working from home. Tax breaks in particular is something that is definitely got to be levied off with public sector workers in some way, because that's gotta be discrimination, right? Surely? Real estate is so saturated here at the moment. Flexible working is common in key workers, especially doctors and managers in the public sector, even before the pandemic, in the form of job sharing. Right, the kind of, in terms of hours you're speaking, yeah. I suppose that's something that maybe they can do better with. If we're going to have this talk about creating a better work-life balance, maybe that's a way of giving them more benefits. Put in policies to help people work from home better, and put in policies to give, say you're saving 2 hours a day commuting, find a way of getting a key worker to save those 2 hours maybe. One person is in at work one day, the other's at home, and vice versa, yeah. Now you remind me, of course, they do it in healthcare in all different ways, don't they?
small businesses that are starting up, food trucks that are going to be distributing food across the city, different types of services that operate in different types of places.
Our changing relationship with work could affect where we live too. It could accelerate a move to what's known in urban planning theory as the polycentric city.
Polycentric city would be a place where you can work, you can live, you can recreate, you can have your social life, your family, in a more
You can die.
way.
In cities like Paris, it's known as the 15-minute city, where daily necessities are within a 15-minute on foot or by bike.
You reduce transit times, you reduce GHG emissions, and also you provide more equitable, more sustainable access to services by this more distributed city model. But that's not to say that you need to live in the suburbs, right?
So what's to say the office can't come closer to us?
I think going forward, companies will need to support workers in that externality. And it could take many forms. Does everyone want to work from home? No. Some people like going to a place, commuting. How are companies that usually would say, come to our main office? Oh, now actually we have a set of sponsored co-working spaces across the city that are closer to where you live and can decrease your commute. And maybe you go to those spaces 3 days a week and you come into the office too. I think we're going to see a whole range of new types of work as people have gained confidence in the efficiency of work from home during this time.
Since the virus outbreak, serviced office brand Regus has already seen
I recognise that guy.
Since the virus
Maybe not.
outbreak, serviced office brand Regus has already seen a surge of more than 40% in activity in New York City commuter hub Southern Connecticut. In the UK, house builders are seeing developments outside of London driven by a change in home office working. While experiences and jobs vary all over the world, many workers have come to expect change. More than 90% of people in a recent survey said they wouldn't return to the office full-time after COVID. There's reasons for employers to embrace the change too. Some already are. Twitter and Facebook have said the switch could become permanent for large parts of their workforce. The COVID-19 pandemic has sent shockwaves through the
They were dancing around a point they didn't quite land on there.
office could make us happier and more productive, while also helping the environment and making our cities more livable.
There we go, helping the environment. Point that I don't think has been mentioned in anything that we've watched here tonight is that, of course, when it comes to whether or not an employee can work from home, an unescapable practicality of it is simply there's going to be some companies that offer it to somebody and there's going to be some companies that don't. And one of the biggest factors that's been overlooked, I think, so far is competition. Just like with everything else, competitive salary, competitive working from home benefits. I think they're going to be hand in hand in job applications going forward. Right next to each other, line by line. Great, you've got drinks on a Friday, but can I work from home? Because I can if I go over there. That's another factor, for sure. For sure. So in the Discord earlier, I'm just going to drop the link there. A couple of folks that were kind enough to write their experience of working from home for me. So I'm just going to read that out now. Some tasty beats on the go, folks. One person said, I found it to be a positive in general, working from home, but quite difficult, as I joined a new company during lockdown, so I struggled to get to grips for a while. I used to miss being in the office, But now I'm going on 2 days a week as a mandatory thing. I really hate it. I have so much more time to relax, do life admin, spend time with my boyfriend, cook and work out. I think I'd be happy to stick to 2 days in the office every week forever. We've all learned that it's possible for most people to do their work at home, holiday home, a beach, or whatever else. So I think forcing people back in is really stupid. It's such a high cost for employees, and also businesses keeping office buildings running for less, or in some cases no people. In the future, I think most businesses will go hybrid and give people the flexibility. So that kind of mirrors the prediction that we've seen there. This idea that businesses are going to have to give way to this and provide some kind of flexibility, right? I don't think any business that's worth their salt, to put it one way, is going to force all of their employees back to work. Especially when there's other companies in their industry that are offering fantastic flexible working benefits. So somebody else has said, I think working from home is pretty good. Employees can work without the boss breathing down their neck as hard. There isn't as much of a pressure to do stuff like employees staying behind after hours out of a kind of pressure from the office environment. I don't work from home because I work in healthcare, but my mother has been working from home and she doesn't stay after hours out of a sense of duty anymore. She takes a full lunch and breaks. I think not having the boss there breathing down people's necks, obviously it'll change per industry, is something to weigh against potential difficulties with technology or whatever. Also, you can slack off and get paid. So that idea of pressure, interesting because that's contradictory to the article that we saw earlier about the chess players, where they argued that professional chess players were performing better during in-person tournaments than they were in online tournaments. I still feel that that study's a bit dubious because it wasn't talking about work, it was talking about chess. But similar to that point we've just heard there in terms of pressure from somebody watching you at work, that's something that you avoid largely when you're working from home. Unless you work at one of those companies where you've seen ghastly introduction of things like basically spyware, where they monitor their employees' mousepad movements and make sure that they're always on. It does happen. Right, folks. I think we've explored this topic very well. We've gone round the houses on this for just over 2.5 hours now. I've loved hearing your experiences. Thank you for sharing them. I think maybe we can move on to something a bit more light-hearted before I end the stream tonight. Spyware, exactly. The legality of it is a bit dubious. Have a look. I'm googling employee spying software. If I get anything here. Here we go. Joshua Fluke has done a couple of different videos about this, but I'm not going to go with him. I'm going to go with CNBC.
Many people are stuck working at home right now, and according to a new survey,
This is from June 2020.
77% of workers want to continue to work from home once the pandemic is over.
The COVID-19 crisis has accelerated the global embrace of remote.
That's a vastly different statistic than we saw earlier. Earlier we saw 9% of employees won't return to the office versus this 77% of workers
COVID-19 crisis.
Workers want to continue to work from home.
Want to continue to work from home. I suppose not exactly the same statistic, but similar.
The pandemic is over.
The COVID-19 crisis has accelerated the global embrace of remote by at least 10 years. So you have tens of millions of people now that are suddenly...
Let's get to this spyware.
The idea of being tracked at work isn't anything new.
We sign off a lot of our rights when we go to work for someone. And, it's in that big pile of paper that you get on your first day.
In many ways, surveillance at work goes back as far as work does. Employers have an interest in trying to understand what people are doing when they're paying for them to be at work.
Anyone who works in IT can tell you that if you are in fact working in the employer's place of business using employer-provided laptops and or other computer equipment, and you are transmitting information across employer-owned networks, you are absolutely being monitored and surveilled.
Many of these kind of monitoring processes have already been implemented on what people consider to be low skill.
Owen, take it easy, my friend.
For example, it's been
very good chatting with you. Thanks for sharing all of that experience you've had from working from home. I appreciate it.
How quickly things have been done and so on.
Have a good one.
Is a lot of these technologies have been introduced already, and now they're starting to kind of flow up the chain of the workforce and be used elsewhere. And I think the shift to working from home means that many of those forms of surveillance, which perhaps we have taken for granted while we're at work, are now reaching into our homes.
Oh, look at those docs.
Many companies that existed pre-pandemic have already developed software to track employees in a variety of ways. There's ProtoScore, Hubstaff, InterGuard, Time Doctor, Terramind, VeryClock, Transparent Business, and many others. ProtoScore alone has seen a 600% uptick in interest from prospective customers since COVID-19.
Very deadly.
Recently, CNBC's Eric Chemi spoke with its CEO.
We take a number of data points, be it a CRM tool that they're currently using, a phone system like a Vonage, an email system, it could be G Suite or Microsoft 365. We aggregate all those data points in a real-time proprietary dashboard that provides them a weighted score. We record and transcribe all your phone calls.
Well, everything I say on the phone
is transcribed. So we now
recorded.
All of it is recorded. We use AI tools to massage that into a real-time score that you see, as does your boss and the CEO and the VP of sales and the chief revenue officer. Everyone is seeing the productivity. Every morning you come to your desk, you have an email from us. You have your productivity score, your ProtoScore is on the first line of the email. Your score yesterday for ProtoScore was 74. Your colleagues were 90. They've done more. And it's a tool that you could gauge yourself.
That is dodgy as fuck.
One example of a company
I don't like that.
Vonage.
I've recently, in the last year,
holy shit,
gone to a virtual Salesforce because of the capabilities with ProtoScore.
Was there ever any pushback from employees that are like, oh, I don't like that you're tracking everything. This feels a little too big brothery?
Of course, it depends. But again, that always depends on who, in sales, if you want to be victim, you can always play the victim, right?
Right.
Guys who go out and get things done are those who use these tools for their advantage. And they know we're watching, which is always good.
Another company working in the same space is Transparent Business, which takes
there's
has seen a 500% spike in users.
Throat business approach that you've got there.
Transparent Business is different from ProtoScore in that it doesn't track anything until workers manually clock in, but it records those exact times and uploads a stream of desktop screenshots to your manager when you are clocked in. You do have the ability to delete those screenshots after the fact or clock out and stop them entirely.
Our technology allows for the monitoring and tracking of the work that the user, the worker, reports as work done. Basically, instead of reporting to an office, we report to the cloud. And the cloud is the canvas, and digitizing the workflow enables us to work better and keep people accountable for the work that they do.
Transparent Business says that this type of system is both easier for the worker and ultimately results in them having more privacy.
It's about consent. When you have a worker going to the office, you are monitoring them all the time. There are cameras everywhere, and this is an invasion to the privacy. People are super stressed out. They don't need a micromanager on top of their head. So with this, they just can say, okay, my process is transparent. I'm actually working. So as I'm actually working, I can share what I'm doing with you.
Screen monitoring.
For one registered nurse in Arizona, the implementation of new tracking software at her job with a major U.S. healthcare company had a huge impact.
About a year in, they switched over to this real-time energy. So instead of going per case, it was per amount of time that you were actively working. And they knew exactly when you started your computer and you logged in, how much time you were on the phone. Everything was marked, counted. One of my friends said, I'm quitting. This is micromanaging. I'm not going to do it. And I thought, why are you getting so angry? Because if you're doing your job, it should measure out. But then on my one-on-one, I got in trouble because I had too much non-productive work. I didn't move my mouse, or I had too much lock time or something, and I got in trouble. And that upset me because I know I'm a hard worker and that shouldn't have happened. The conclusion of all of this is that I left my job. It was just too stressful. I didn't enjoy what I was doing anymore.
But the big question
Gosh,
is,
getting very upset. Distrust.
Because for many managers and CEOs,
that's like it's a bit of a kicker for so many businesses. Distrust. Good business owners know the value of trust. And it's such a red herring, this kind of, oh, well, got nothing to hide. Because pretty soon it'll be you. Could do anything, how you doing? Exactly. If you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to fear. It's good timing. We're in sync there.
Losing productivity as a result of more workers working from home is a huge concern.
As a C-level employee or colleague myself, as a person, I've always been very fearful of employees being remote. I've always wanted them in the office. I wanted to look at them, feel them. I'm a very tactile leader, I think, and I wanted that. And I was always uncomfortable. Are they working? How do we assess them working? And this has comforted me. And a lot of CEOs I talk to that are using the product now, it's comforting them that they are actually getting activity and productivity from their staff while being remote.
Right. Here's my take on this. You're paying for comfort. You're not paying for productivity. You're paying for comfort, right? Comfort is somebody's working all day. Productivity isn't necessarily people are doing things all day. That's not what you're getting out of this. You're getting comfort. You're getting the reassurance that people are appearing to be working all day. I go even a step further and say, if you're giving people full visibility over the metrics that you're using to monitor them at work, that means that that's open to manipulation, right? Was he playing solitaire? I also like that footage of the jabbing on the shoulder.
I'm a very tactile leader, I think, and I wanted that.
This guy. Brilliant. No shame.
And I was always uncomfortable. Are they working? How do we assess them working? And this has comforted me. And a lot of CEOs.
I don't think I noticed any of this the first time I saw this footage. Stock footage and stock photos in general are just meant to not pay attention to, aren't they? The second you pay attention to them, it's over.
And this has comforted me. And a lot of CEOs I talk to that are using the
Oh, God. Obsessed. Obsessed. This time, so much.
working. And this has comforted me. And a lot of CEOs I talk to that are using the product now, it's comforting them that they are actually getting activity and productivity from their staff while being remote.
All right, that's enough of that. Spinning in a chair.
Easy option. You buy a software package, you have it installed on people's computers. You then feel like as an employer that you're somehow in control of, this new dispersed workforce that are all working from home.
But if you look at the academic research on the topic, you find that these systems might not be accomplishing what you expect.
The evidence most broadly in the academic literature is that hard quantitative targets don't work. They don't make people feel good about their work. They don't make people feel happy and secure in their employment. And so they tend to have an effect of, burnout is one of the main ones, and decreasing morale.
Implementing surveillance or productivity tracking essentially masks a deeper, more systemic issue. And that is, do people actually know what makes them successful at work?
We've known since the 50s that.
Also, the problem is with that burnout issue is that managers in sales and owners of sales-based companies are very familiar with the idea that people are going to burn out. And the problem is, speak to anybody that works in those positions, they'll tell you they're more than prepared for people to burn out, because there's plenty of people that are going to take a sales position, because we're in that kind of shitty economy, unfortunately. So, monitor you burn out, but somebody takes your place very quickly. And I've got what I need out of you. That's the harsh reality of it. I say this with no experience of sales. It's all anecdotal.
People do their best when they're given their goals, they're given the tools to meet their goals, and they're set on their way.
There are ways in which the psychological pressures of being watched can actually impair productivity.
You want to say to an employer, have you thought about talking to your workers? Like asking them what's going on, like having a discussion, because often, it's that kind of genuine engagement that is what makes everybody's experience of work better.
Data generally shows that employees are actually more productive when they work from home, because they usually start earlier and they work later with fewer interruptions than they do in the office.
So if people are, on average, as productive or more productive at home, are there still reasons to use a system like this?
Inevitably, averages mask people who are both less productive and more productive. And so because you can't distinguish who those employees individually are, who are more productive and less productive, unless you actually track them, that's the justification for tracking them.
When you don't have visibility, you don't know who is like really working super hard and who is taking a COVID-19 vacation.
I do think that there are very few times in the workplace where you could reasonably say the employer doesn't have a right to know what I'm doing or to not control my behavior or my conduct. And so we increasingly find that employees are willing to forego some of their privacy in exchange for jobs, particularly in the current economy.
A lot of these questions lead to bigger ongoing issues about data and privacy.
I think there's this idea that, if you're generating data, capturing data from people when they're working from home, at least then you as a manager can say, well, I brought this software in, I've tried to do everything I could do.
I mean, for me, it's okay if they use it in terms of big data. Okay, in general, these are the things that we need to work on. We've got people spending too much time on chat or whatever it is. But when it gets down to individual data, it's just, I can't think of any other reason you would do it than you don't trust your people.
Yeah. So she's saying, take a look at it as the company as a whole, right? As a whole, 20% of people are spending 3 hours a day on Facebook. Something needs to change. But if you're picking out John and you're saying you spending too much time on Facebook, I can see it on the dashboard, I mean, how does that sound to everyone? Does that sound sinister or does that sound right? Where are we with it?
Worker surveillance isn't anything new. Much of this particular kind of surveillance is new.
The law simply is not keeping up with this technology. Right now, what we have are general laws that say while employees don't have a lot of privacy, they do have some, right? And so the law really does need to play catch up. I think it is probably true that we need
Some privacy.
for greater legal protections and greater restrictions on what employers reasonably can and cannot do.
Both ProtoScore and Transparent Business promote the idea of openness and keeping workers informed on what's happening. But companies are not legally required to do that.
So you don't need their permission because it's all company
data. It's all company data. It's the company, the systems they are currently using. So there's a lot of data points that companies get. They don't share.
God damn it, John.
So if they don't track and surveil workers, what should companies do?
It's all you, John. Every single month.
Darren Murph is head of remote for GitLab, a company that has operated its more than 1,200 person workforce all remotely since its inception.
For a lot of managers, this is a jarring moment for them where they have to kind of question everything that has got them thus far and learn in real time what it takes to be a great remote manager.
GitLab doesn't use surveillance software. It instead focuses on documenting metrics and objectives, fostering open communication, and emphasizing results.
The key here is don't just look at how often someone is sitting in front of their keyboard or in front of their desk. That was never a great way to measure productivity, even in the office. Fundamentally, we believe that you should measure results, not hours spent.
And that's how it already works for many people in management.
When are we going to start measuring the CEO's productivity?
At the end of the day, it's investor returns and how we do that and grow the stock price, right? For public or private companies.
We have milestones, we have due dates, we have
An answer was that? Let's have that answer again.
Fundamentally, we believe that you should measure results, not hours spent.
And that's how it already works for many people in management.
When are we going to start measuring the CEO's productivity?
At the end of the day, it's investor returns and how we do that and grow the stock price, right? For public or private companies.
We have milestones, we have due dates, we have reminders.
Right.
But it's on each individual and team and leader.
So judge me by my results, but I'll judge you by the time that you spend on Facebook.
To use these functions to keep us all on track. At the core of it, humans are not robots. We are empathetic beings, and especially in a remote setting, the fabric of that, the culture of that is really important for morale to stay high and for people to feel like they're connected as a team and not just another cog in the wheel.
For some, much of this comes down to what it is you're trying to accomplish in the first place.
Is that drive towards productivity the only thing that we want from work? You know, if it is, buy the software packages, have viewing of people's desktops while they're at home the whole time. But I don't think that's the kind of organization that many people want to work for today. One of the kind of lessons that people maybe can take away from this during the pandemic is just because a new tool is going to be used or is proposed to be used, doesn't mean it has to be. Work should be a negotiation.
So this is a point of inflection for
right to bargain with employer.
Both.
And there are many employers that are looking at this and thinking, this is a real opportunity to reshape work, to change whether people think surveillance is acceptable or not, to change who needs to be in the office and who doesn't. Will it benefit people who are working and are now able to work in new ways, or will it benefit employers who will find new ways to get the most out of people's time they've bought, to make people work even harder and so on?
Employees can help too. You can manage.
Right, to me, this is back to be honest, ultimately this point around competition, right? It's this idea of, regardless of what your philosophy about the business is, someone's going to use this monitoring software, someone's going to not use it. Who are you going to go with? Somebody is going to let you work from home unmonitored. Somebody's going to make you come into the office. Who are you going to go with? None. How you doing? Why are these people whining? Because they're being monitored with spying software. I'd say that's a fair reason to whine, wouldn't you? What are we talking about? What's voluntary? Not a fair reason to whine because it's what's voluntary? What's voluntary? What is voluntary? Folks, let's have a game. Lighten the mood. I'm quite happy with our breakdown of that subject. Working from home. We've kind of, I think, got a sense of where the future takes us with it. For me personally, I want that right to work from home. I want that policy. I want it in writing. When you can see all of the benefits of it, surely the choice is what we want at this point. Do none? So you're saying it's voluntary, so they shouldn't whine. I suppose that's a legitimate point, isn't it? I don't think a lot of people will whine. I think, like most people in this video who complained about it, they'll just leave. You want to monitor me? Fuck you, I'm off. I'm out of here. Philosophy aside, it really comes down to what businesses are about, right? Competition, the market. If the market is changing in favour of working from home and a better work-life balance, you better get on board or you'll be left behind. You happy with that, Unan, yeah? Right. The video is just annoying. Fair enough. Let's play some Crossy Road. Bear with, folks. Set up here. I enjoyed our dissection of that subject. I think we've done very well, folks. Right. Let's have it. See how I do. And I'll keep chatting to you folks. But I also want to try and beat my high score, which I think is something like 80. Annoyingly, it won't show me. Let me see if I can see. Go back to the start. Boomerangs. Thank you very, very much for the follow, my friend. There's a Jack Nicholson for you. Oh, no, it's different. Oh, this is a cool version. Got like Pac-Man going on. It's a tense game, this, folks. I only discovered it a couple of days ago. Ooh. Oh. It was interesting to hear different perspectives on it. I'm glad you found it interesting, Ella. I found it very interesting as well. Thanks, folks, again for sharing your experiences with me. It's one of those things where I used to look at the subject and I used to think, well, obviously, everyone wants to work from home. Why wouldn't you? Very, very quickly shown how naive that position was. There's so many different things at play. You know, I approach it from the position of a relatively young person without kids, without many financial responsibilities beyond the immediate future. Soon as you talk about families, it's a whole different fucking ball game. It's really a case of doing very well here. Suddenly you're talking about, first of all, a whole different financial kettle of fish. But then childcare, schools. I must admit, I was quite good, 44. I never understood quite how much of a linchpin the school system is in terms of everything in the fucking world until the pandemic hit. I never quite realised how once you are unable to send your child into a school, the world turns upside down. And it sounds silly now, really something that I should have been aware of, but until I saw it, something that I never really took on board, you know? Oh fuck, I'm not doing very well here at all. Right, to take it easy. I'm back to the chicken. Why has it gone back to chicken now, I wonder? Back to chicken. Weird. Hey. Shit. Now it's back to the coin. So bad. I never get that free gift because I feel like it's going to make me try and pay for something. Oh shit. This is not a good performance at all. Ooh. Hey. Come on. Yes. Shit. Shit. Oh my god. Fuck. Shit. Shit. 53. Top 63, that says. Is that that must be my high score today or of all time? I'm not sure. This game is kind of mesmerizing. It is, isn't it? I love the kind of oh, what do you call it now? Does anybody know the word for this style of game, which is like diagonal on, pixelated, like blocks diagonal on? There's a word for that style and I can't think what it is. What am I thinking of? Hey. There you go. Shit. I want to beat that score. Why is there What am I now? I'm like some kind of... Jesus, the whole war going on. I don't know what those coins give me, if anything. More points, I suppose. Oh, no. Ooh, this is very cool. Very cool indeed. Isotropic. Thank you, could do anything. That's exactly what I was thinking of. The lovely isotropic style. Look at these visuals. These colours, it's a bit of a... It's like a bit of a cyberpunky kind of thing. Well, not really, but... Whoa. Close. Close. But no cigar. Let's have it. Get shown a picture of my flattened self. Fair enough. Ooh. They did that for dramatic effect. Come on. Nightbot, you are absolutely right. You want to join the Discord, folks? Let's have some political chats, debates off stream. Let's keep the party going. How is it that Nightbot puts it? Keep the fun going. We can work on that, Nightbot. We can work on that enthusiasm, I think. Ooh. Ooh. Yes, come on. Oh. Yes, yes. Get in. Beat the top score. Fuck yeah. Trying to get me to share it. I won't go that far. Couple more goes. Cheers, Ella. Feels good, man. Have a couple more goes. $70 would be nice. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, isn't it? You instantly adjust your expectations. And judge yourself just that little bit harsher each time. It's a bad cycle. I could keep playing it just for the visuals, to be honest, because it's so nice looking. The style of it is just fucking awesome. The kind of thing that I could just watch on a continuous loop. think our chat tonight, folks, about working from home is something that I will be referring back to for many a year. I think it's going to be interesting to see how everything plays out. So many different sides to this debate. There's so many different interests. You've got the people inside the office and their interests. So that's the worker, the owner. But then you've got the interests outside of it too. And perhaps I haven't really talked about that as much as I usually do when it comes to subjects like this. The government aspect of it, the political aspect, if you will. Because of course, it's not just the business itself, it's everything around the business. In the city, you've got businesses that rely on the worker taking a break, going and spending their money. At the same time, you've got workers that want to live in the city, and you've got property moguls, magnates, what have you, call them what you will, supplying this property. Perhaps on another stream, or you can look this up in your own time. Many of you will know it already. The current Conservative Party's links with property run deep. The amount of lobbying where property owners, property managers have turned to Tory MPs and said, "You get this law changed, mate," or "A cheeky donation for you, but need you to sweeten it for me." This is happening left, right and centre in the current Conservative Party. Not just property, of course, it's health too. The current Health Secretary ultimately fell to the scandal of him having an affair with his parliamentary aide. But before that, he'd already handed out COVID contracts to his mates without proper adherence to the rules around that kind of thing. He'd got away with that, and ultimately him getting caught on HD video snogging his aide in the office is what did him in, probably understandably. What happened there? I was just standing on the log. Demand a refund. Bing, bing, bing. Bing, 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 bing. So yeah, there's a whole other aspect of this debate that we didn't really cover today. If you're out there and you're thinking to yourself, what should I do? I felt myself I just find myself urging people to do what's best for them. I hope that you understand that when I bring these subjects up, I'm not looking at the different opinions of it, saying, you should follow this advice. Not advice that we're looking for here today. It's just a general curiosity about the future. In the end, you're going to do what's best for you, I hope. not listen to Chancellor of the Exchequer Richie Sunak when he says that young people's careers will suffer if they work from home, when he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Because, shall I say it for a fourth time on stream tonight? Let's do it. He propelled himself to success on the back of his billionaire father-in-law. That doesn't give you a position of authority to speak on whether or not working from home works. 58, that's a pretty good score. Yeah, could do anything. I think you're right. I floated out of bounds. Surprised at the amount of people weighing in that haven't worked in an office in a very long time, and have a frightening lack of data to back up their experiences, their opinions, should I say. You either need experience or data. I feel like that is the only way to validate yourself in any of these conversations that we have here. Right? If you can't look at some hard evidence and you haven't experienced anything that we're talking about, what is the value of the opinion? Maybe that sounds harsh. But I would say that's my guiding fucking light. What do we think? The data is they're in charge, so must know everything. Must know everything, could do anything. Indeed. Animal Farm. These were always the rules. Very melancholy music. Right, I'm going to head off shortly, folks. This was absolutely lovely, as always. Thank you again for sharing all your experiences and giving me a better sense of this topic. I'm going to have a look at who we can raid. Ah, Gromsterino. They're very nice. Do 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 do. Always a pleasure, folks. Never a chore. I shall be back on Saturday morning, bright and early. And I hope to see you there. Thank you very much, folks. As always, when you head over there, give them a follow and tell them the British are coming. Hello, you take care. Could do anything. See you on the next one. See you later, folks. Let's do this. Bye bye.